this might not be an ideal situation for a tanky, but we'll see how they'll try to justify it. Anyway, Destiny?
Yeah, I mean, the arguments have remained virtually unchanged since the beginning of the war. Russia doesn't really have any good reason to go after Ukraine. Russia has continued to threaten Ukraine's sovereignty in a way that we haven't seen any nation threaten the sovereignty of any. The idea that the territorial integrity of another country could be threatened by a larger power because of fears of the type of government they'll have, or the potential voluntary joining of NATO, or the potential voluntary joining of open markets in Europe, is just as ridiculous now as it was a few months ago when the war began. We've seen Russia commit to atrocious military strategy, whether we're talking about civilians being murdered in places like Mariupol, or whether we're talking about the, I guess, just the overall mayhem or destruction that they brought in cities that they've been forced to retreat from now. There's any justification that could revolve around trying to say that Russia finds Ukraine's sovereignty. That hasn't changed since the beginning of the war. And unfortunately, now Russia finds itself in the bad end of a protracted war that it doesn't seem to be able to support. And yeah, I'm curious to see if we have any new arguments that could possibly justify the failing Russian invasion into Ukraine.
Oh, yeah.
You got it. Thank you very much. We'll kick it over to Jackson and Infrared, but want to say, folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, we're a neutral channel hosting debates on science, religion, and politics. We hope you feel welcome no matter what walk of life you are from, and we have many more juicy upcoming debates. A controversial one. Next week, Vosh and Dr. Bogardus debating whether or not trans women are women. You don't want to miss it, as well as many other debates. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it. And with that, thanks so much, Jackson and Infrared. The floor is all yours for your openings as well.
Very happy
to
that
interrupt like that.
Izov Something and Destiny have joined us for a debate today, because last time they bitched out and refused to debate us. And I feel like they probably collected their ideas and their views by now, so it's good that they're here.
Well said, Jackson.
Before we get into it, though, and I hope Azov Something can respond to this, you've gone out and you've posted memes of Stefan Bandera, the infamous Nazi in Ukraine. You've been criticized by your own audience for doing this. You said that you defended the Azov battalion because what else is Ukraine supposed to do than to support the Azov Nazis and bring them into their National Guard ranks and allow them to basically slaughter and genocide people in the Donbass for 8 years. So the Azov Nazis and posting Bandera memes online. But as we get into this, I mean, obviously the war, this special military operation, invasion, whatever party wants to call it, began due to Western escalation. We saw the continued threat of NATO accession of Ukraine leading up well into the Zelensky administration, even up until the last days prior to this invasion beginning. We saw the West and nations that previously were neutral flooding Ukraine with arms. We've seen over the past 6 years, we've seen NATO training Ukrainian battalions. We've seen the U.S. training special op Ukrainian forces in the United States. And we also saw that the Ukrainians were planning an offensive, an invasion into the Donbass. We know for the past 8 years, Putin has tried to secure peace in Ukraine through the Minsk Accords and the Minsk II Accords, both of which were violated by Ukrainian forces. The ceasefire violations were violated, especially in the days leading up to the war. We saw an dramatic increase in ceasefire violations. And though the only point out who is responsible for these violations, Donetsk officials say that Ukraine was responsible for the vast majority of these violations in the final days of the war. But then again, this isn't nearly as important as the fact that there were documents released, I believe it was on March 8th, which pointed out that Ukraine's National Guard was planning an invasion into the Joint Forces Operation Zone in the Donbass. They were going to do a full-scale invasion. And in an effort to prevent NATO accession on Russia's border, in an effort to prevent the slaughter of more Donbass civilians in Donetsk and Lugansk with this threat of an invasion, and to prevent the Nazis like the Azovs that you, Azov Something, have defended from killing more civilians and spreading their ideology, Russia decided to make a counter move to the 8-year war, which was started after a U.S. coup by launching this special military operation.
Additionally, in regards to this allegation by Adam Soything that we had, if anyone's interested, we don't actually have to argue about it. You can go on my channel where I provide irrefutable proof that at the very least, Adam Soything was lying that me and Jackson refused to debate him. There's I show the full DMs with Modern Day Debate, and I provide evidence from Modern Day Debate's Twitter that says it was actually him that backed out of that. But, let's not dwell too much. To what Jackson said with the kind of broader picture, this notion that what we're witnessing is this time-old Russian imperialism, the notion that the Soviet Union was imperialist is already questionable, but the Soviet Union doesn't even exist anymore. Although Russia has inherited the Soviet Union as a state, there can be no question of Russia without an international system of equal sovereign nations. Now, the international system that has resulted from the architects of the Bretton Woods system after World War II, I don't even think the two gentlemen here will try and make the argument that that system has resulted in free and equal sovereignty. The United States has an exceptional status in that international system, and it had sought, after the fall of the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc, to integrate not only the former countries of the Warsaw Pact, but also the former Soviet Union into that international system. And it has been Russia's resistance to being integrated into that international system in the Western aggression that led up to the events in Ukraine today. So I think I'll just leave it there for now.
Sorry.
You got it. We'll let you know, folks. 100% of today's super chats are going to go to the Domestic Violence Action Center. So this is an organization with a great charity watchdog rating, save funds for what they say they are, which is helping abuse, or I should say, people who have been abused or people who are coming out of domestic violence situations. And so highly encourage you, hey, send in a super chat, as you can both ask a question for the Q&A, and it's going to a good cause, 100% of it. So with that, thanks very much. Gentlemen, the floor is all yours for open conversation. I want to remind you, if it gets too unyieldy, if it gets too wild, I do have to mute you. And here we go. 3, 2, 1, go.
Just a quick point as we start. I have this email in front of me that I got from with regards to who pitched out of the debate. He wrote, "Hi Adam, I'm bummed that Jackson, Hinkle, and Infrared aren't going for it despite my best efforts to persuade them. However, I'm not exaggerating when I say I might have a better idea of Russia." And then we got the justice debate. So here, James on the 2nd of March wrote to me that Hinkle and Infrared aren't going for it despite him trying to convince them otherwise. You can ask James about it after the debate if you want. This email, I got this from the Modern Day Debate. So this is the only way to interpret this, is that you guys have backed out. This is on my Discord.
English is not your first language, obviously, bro.
So feel free to check it out for yourself. Otherwise, I can see that this debate is going to be pretty much
It's
like
not my first language.
It's essentially disinfo and misrepresentation, etc. And just like bad faith, Gishkel of gaslighting, the usual. That's Jackson's MO mostly. Infrared just screams a lot. But
were you not posting photos of Stefan Bandera?
Yes, which was actually a spin on this Russian sort of hysteria about Stefan Bandera. If you know European history, you know that yes. I know it's funny. It's funny to it's only funny because you're a bit ignorant on this.
Well, your own audience called you out.
Some people found it weird, which I fully understand. But I think the thing to understand here is that. That image I interpreted as essentially a play on this Russian aversion to Stepan Bandera, ooh, look at ooh, the Bandera, that kind of thing. The second thing,
I don't really. And in fact, you said that that Bandera, and would you be willing to say here live that they are not just far right, but they're Nazis? Can we get that on the record?
Some of them are definitely Nazis.
Well, hold on. To be clear, on the record right now, the Azov Battalion is not the same Azov Battalion that it was pre-2014. The Azov Battalion has been properly assumed in the Ukrainian forces, and the idea that the majority of these people, or even a sizable chunk of them, are
did they assimilate the Nazi swastikas on their arms too?
Really? You don't think that the SS? Destiny. You don't think that the SS?
Do you have any source on that actually?
You don't think that the SS
Wolfsengel? Wait, let's chill. Let's not chill. Hold on.
You don't think that the SS Wolfsengel symbol on their actual uniforms is a symbol of their ideology, that they are Nazis, or the Black Sun logo that is a Nazi symbol?
Yep. Okay. So my response to this is that when I'm trying to figure out what's happening in terms of foreign affairs, I'm not looking at pictures that people post on Facebook and Twitter.
What an asshole.
There is a
God
right.
damn,
So we're gonna say
dude.
like there's a significant Nazi or far right.
How do you argue with someone like that?
In Ukraine,
You know,
What I'd be
this is why I hate
interested in is that,
debates.
like, are there an elevation of the amount of attacks?
Yeah,
on
that's
people
not
like
a valid
anti-Semitic? We have,
source.
like,
I'm not
crystal
getting
map
my
going on.
information
Do we
from
have people
Facebook
that are
memes?
encouraging a lot of anti-Semitic or hateful behavior towards Jewish people in
We
Ukraine?
do.
I don't see that anywhere.
We do.
There aren't really widespread reports of that. Polling data in Ukraine shows that like they're not anti-Semitic, in arguably the least anti-Semitic country in I think in all of Europe. I don't even think it's Eastern Europe. So I'm not really as convinced about pictures of people with dumb fucking symbols and shit on the military uniforms. I'm sure there are probably some Nazis in the Ukrainian.
Well, I mean, it's their official
sure that-
symbol.
Let me just.
It's their official
I'm
symbol.
sure that- I'm
You're
sure
making
there
it
are-
seem like a
I'm-
smaller
We'll
thing.
give Steven 20 seconds to finish, and then
Sure,
we'll come
I'm
over
sure
to
there
you.
are far-right aspects to literally every single military in the world, but if you cared as much about this, why don't you ever talk about like the Wagner Group?
He
Why don't
muted
you ever talk about
Jackson.
any of
You can see it in the
far-right
bottom
elements
right
that exist in
corner.
Russia that literally train foreign fighters that like do operations for far-right causes in other countries, like in Sweden.
Well,
yeah.
The Wagner Group doesn't have any official ties to the Russian government, but regardless, I just wanted to ask,
Oh god.
are you trying to suggest that it's not possible for there to be neo-Nazis, active neo-Nazis, I should add, if there aren't
Maybe he's not
anti-Jewish
muted.
pogroms going on? Because I'll have you know that the biggest victims of Nazi violence during World War II were Slavs, and Russian Slavs in particular. So I'm not sure where this idea that Nazis have to engage in anti-Semitic violence. I mean, it's clear they do have anti-Semitic views, that's well documented, but I don't see why that has to be a key criteria. Now, regarding the Wagner Group, even if you want to say that the Russian government has these under-the-cover ties, I mean, that is vastly different than integrating literal neo-Nazi groups into your official military, as Ukraine has done for their National Guard. So I don't really see the comparison. I mean, you could say that Russia's doing some under-the-rug shady shit if you're going to try an argument. There's no evidence of that. But even if that was true, it wouldn't be the same as the way in which Ukraine has literally integrated these people into its official
Hey,
military.
Ren Ben, what's up, buddy?
Yeah, so I mean, the difference is that like the Wagner Group still operates as the arm, as the paramilitary arm of the Russian military.
That's
They
the key
still-
word, though,
when they're-
paramilitary.
Thanks, bro. Glad you're here watching.
What is that?
State sanctioned, state supported, state
Yeah, what does
control.
that mean to you? What do you
They're a
mean?
private
Like,
mercenary group.
they're private mercenaries that work at the behest of the Kremlin. They are.
Where's your
directly,
evidence of that?
Like,
Wait,
wait, are we having this debate? Wait, is that a debate we're
Yeah.
having right now? That the Wagner Group is just some independent operating thing that doesn't have any ties to
Oh, yeah,
Russia?
which
Is that where we're
always-
at?
Well, you're
it's
trying to
always
make a
something to show,
comparison
like,
to
Russia
a.
versus
And by the way, we all know it's not just the Azov battalion. Of course, Azov is probably the most given the most spectacle and attention because they are so out in the open with regard to the fact that they do have these Nazi symbols as their official logos. But I mean, you look at all these other groups. You look at Trident. You look at is it the C-14? You look at all these groups that are responsible for these mass atrocities. And they are the ideological inheritors of Stefan Bandera, who, again, Adam something here seems to think is a guy worth making memes about and posting about on his YouTube page. But what I will say
Right.
is
It's
that
a business.
at the end
War
of
is
the
a
day,
racket.
the
We
people
know.
who started these
Everyone on this
groups,
show, we
started
all
these
agree.
parties, started this mass political movement in Ukraine to carry out the ideological ambitions.
This
of
guy
Nazi
right here
collaborators like
and the guy in the
Stefan
top
Bandera.
right,
They say things like,
They're-
we
they're
want to
cheering
rid
on this
Ukraine,
war.
Rid
This
non-Ukraine
Jackson
Ukraine. We want to get Russians
are
and Jews out of
anti-war,
Ukraine.
and they
That was
want the war to
Ilya Tanya
stop.
book. We saw
And they just- they
Andriy
basically just
Parubi,
relay the
Andriy
facts.
Belitsky, rather. He was the commander of the Azov battalion. And still is. He said that he wanted to he professed his support. Listen, he wanted to profess his support for a crusade of white nations against Semitic-led subhumans. So when there are 1,000 people in the Donbass, do you not think that that is the true actions of Nazis? That is them carrying out their ideological ambitions?
No, it's a civil war within the country. You don't see them like
Against ethnic
this-
Russians.
against people
No.
that are being supported by Russia breaking away from their country.
Why are they
And if
being
you wanna
supported by Russia?
Because Russia is trying to undermine the sovereignty of Ukraine, and they've been trying to do so ever
Well-
since 2014 when their guy got ousted from the government.
Wow.
I
Before we
mean,
get into
from
that-
Russia's part, it's simple blood and soil, essentially. And
So I'd like to ask-
Has one sec, please. Quick question for you. We keep hearing about this. We keep hearing about this massive Nazi problem in Ukraine, right? Like, of course, citation needed, but Also, guys, don't you find it funny how like your position is held by virtually every neo-Nazi movement in Europe right now? Like in Hungary, there's a literal Nazi party in parliament right now, our homeland it's called, who are just spreading the same kind of propaganda that you do. They say the exact same thing. Fidesz, Viktor Orban's party.
It has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Cash party also believes the same thing. And every single far-right party in Europe, every single
Is Orban's party right now genociding ethnic Russians?
Exactly. Thank you.
Genocide in Ukraine. What are you
What?
talking about?
Well, I just wanted to first of all, Adam,
Russia is genociding more ethnic Russians right now than anyone else.
Adam, I think you're
That's
wrong about
factually
that.
incorrect.
Russian areas, ethnic Russian casualties are mounting in one second, and ethnic Russian civilian casualties are mounting in the areas that Russia is attacking.
So you think that none of those ethnic Russian deaths could have been responsible by the Ukrainian forces like they were over the past 8 years?
So now we switch to like, don't you think some of them might have been killed by Ukraine? Come on, dude. Look, if
No, you answer the question. I asked you a question. You're making it out to be that all ethnic Russians killed are a result of Russian airstrikes or something like that.
Of course, not 100%.
Okay, well, good.
Now we just found out that your point has no weight. It was a piece of straw, and it has no meaning or bearing on this conversation.
Compared to the past 8 years.
Boom.
Most ethnic are anti-Russian military and anti-invasion.
Before we get into that,
how does that happen?
You said the majority of neo-Nazis are pro-Russia, which isn't true. It's just that the majority
European absolutely
not true.
Look at their policies.
How do you know how people are? It's so crazy how this guy claims to know. This guy's just all
They're
bullshit.
not neo-Nazis.
Oh yeah, the majority. Oh, I did this poll and a study, and I know how they feel. And I know what I know why Abraham Lincoln started the Civil War.
I live in East Germany right now.
You'd probably call.
But anyway,
Trump is not a Nazi. He's just like a.
But I wanted to ask you the question.
I think Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert and people like that. I think they're like kind of proto Nazis. Like I mean, what I'm saying is they would not.
I'm interested in your notion of Nazism when you consider Stepan Bandera not a Nazi but conservative.
No, Stepan Bandera had a complicated.
Yeah, mainstream media kept pushing it. Ben Kanan, do you want to know what my big clue to this war was? One big lie.
You know what he said about
I watched Jackson Hinkle, and I've watched him for a long time, and he was on this when it first started, and I knew what was going on.
In America are not.
Wait, hold on. Are you going to
Because
let
I
him
watch
finish? You're
him.
just going to keep like rapid fire questions.
I didn't need to wait for mainstream media to come around.
I would just love to know how.
Pause. I do want to let him finish.
So about Bandera, I think it's very important to note the
mainstream media
context.
still hasn't come around yet.
At that point, the Soviet Union was doing something similar to Ukraine that it's doing now, and at that point, the Germans, the Nazis came through from the west, and the Ukrainians, of course, were resisting the Soviet invasion, and the Nazis were like, hey guys, we kind of hate the Russians too. Like, do you want to like team up or something? Cool. And so of course, and they were anti-Semitic. Of course,
That's a separate historical debate that we can't get into.
Yeah,
but
I have to explain this to you because none of you seem to understand this. Okay, so back was anti-Semitic, and there was like a whole bunch of genocides in Western Ukraine, mostly of Poles and Jews. There was like scorched earth.
This guy's a hack.
In Europe, generally,
he's
like,
a
the more
phony.
east you go, the more brutal these pogroms and purges get.
And you could tell by the look on his face
This has been the norm for hundreds of years.
that he's fed up with
of groups genociding other groups, and anti-Semitism has been like a constant theme. So Stepan Bandera, as horrible he was, and of course the level of far out in the east, unfortunately, from a European perspective, that was not that special, right? And then later on, Bandera himself got like imprisoned by Nazis and removed from power, etc.
Wait.
It's complicated. So.
But this is an outright falsification of history. The idea
No, it's
that
not.
Okay, well you're gonna let me talk now because I let you do that. But the idea that Bandera is part of the Holocaust, if you don't know, the anti-Jewish violence in Ukraine perpetrated by the Banderas is just another incident of anti-Semitic violence in the history of Europe. That would be true if it wasn't for the fact that the Ukrainian nationalist ideology, even before the Nazi invasion, was heavily drawing from the inspiration of German fascism and Nazism, as were most of the other extreme ultra-nationalists across Europe at the time who had an anti-Soviet agenda. So what you're saying is a falsification of history. Bandera's anti-Semitism was of a Hitlerite character. It was not some traditional conservative European and I just find it hilarious that you're doing all this mental gymnastics to try and tell us that a literal person who helped perpetrate the Holocaust alongside of the Nazis is not a Nazi, is just a collaborator, but American paleo conservatives are somehow Nazis. I mean, that's quite the stretch.
Can I ask,
but I wanted to ask you,
Could I just ask a quick question about that, and then you can finish anything? I'm just curious. Would you consider the USSR a Nazi country?
Absolutely not. No.
So when the USSR is literally writing up agreements to split Poland in half and join invade it, and having non-aggression pacts and setting like the stage for like future alliances with Nazi Germany, how do you rationalize that in your mind? I'm so curious.
Yeah, it's very clear. The Soviet Union made several overtures to France and Britain and the other Western allied countries to form a security pact against the Germans. When the Germans kept going east to Czechia, they had their intention to go east to Poland. The Soviets were left with no choice but to continue to buy time because they were not prepared for a military confrontation with the Nazis.
So left with no choice, like Bandera was in Ukraine, in order to like fend off.
No,
Soviet.
no,
the same thing.
No.
The same shit.
No.
Bandera was definitely left with the choice to not actually collaborate with the Nazis in the Holocaust. Yeah, he was definitely.
The USSR had to.
The USSR most definitely had to have a non-aggression pact in order to buy up the necessary time to build up its military and industrialize.
It wasn't just a non-aggression pact. They invaded Poland with Germany. They split that country in half.
No, Germany had told the USSR of its intention to invade Poland, and then the USSR said, okay, we won't go to war with you over this if you don't cross this line. Now, when the Polish government fled Poland in exile to London, the Soviets came to the Eastern Poland to defend the Soviet Union. That is why at the time, the Polish government and the British government did not accuse the Soviet Union of invading Poland, and they didn't go to war with the Soviet Union, and that they went to war with Germany, and the Soviet Union did not invade Poland. The whole pretext of World War II was the invasion of Poland by Germany. Why didn't Britain declare war on the Soviet Union?
Wait,
but did the Polish government flee before or after the USSR invaded, Haas?
Oh, yeah.
It was in response to the German invasion.
Did the Polish government flee before or after the USSR invaded?
At the same time.
Okay. Why would they flee if they're not at war? Shouldn't they be like chill? Like,
well, then why didn't the Allies declare war on the Soviet Union if the Soviet Union was invading Poland?
I'm not asking why they. I'm just curious how it's just interesting to me that the USSR was basically forming like a long-term alliance, or had in the works a long-term alliance with Nazi Germany. But you've got like a rationalization for that. But Bandera is like literally evidence of.
Well, okay, Destiny.
Leaders. He explicitly rejected any long-term alliance and New Order for Europe. He said, "We don't want to form a new order, a new world order with you guys. We just want our security concerns to be respected. Don't cross this line in Poland. Don't go to Bulgaria. Don't go here." Mm-hmm. And then it was totally, meant to just defend the Soviet Union, not to create this long-term alliance.
All right, hold on, just another. I'm sorry, because there was the massacre, the Captain Massacre, or whatever, where the USSR is executing like tens of thousands of fucking Polish military officers and intelligentsia. You had the what was the name of the KPD officials, the communists that fled Germany into the USSR, were shipped right back to Germany to be executed. What do you mean they were just like not aggressive, dude?
To the historian done a lot of work to show.
I don't have him to talk to right now. I just have you, Haas, to talk to.
Well,
do you think neither of those things happened?
I don't have time to go through all of those claims, so I'm just going to tell you that I deny.
Cheers, bro.
Yeah, like Destiny, you probably think there's a genocide. You probably think there's a genocide in Xinjiang right now too. So you're not the most reliable source in the world. But what I want to point is that you're making an argument about the Soviet Union protecting their security and whatnot. We saw Stefan Bandera literally work together with Nazi and massive SS battalions in Ukraine to band together tens of thousands of Ukrainians to slaughter hundreds of thousands of Poles,
SS isn't bad either. That's just
and
paramilitary.
Jews. And you're trying to compare the two, and it's literally insane. You're trying to equate a security pact with literal Nazi genocide of Ukrainians. It's insane.
Yeah, but SS is just paramilitary. That's not.
You're actually fucking insane.
Do you have any proof that the SS was like controlled by the German government? Just like
Say that again. I didn't hear you.
Do you have any proof that like the SS was directly controlled by Hitler?
Heard of Hitler actually ordering the murder of any Jewish people,
it
right?
Was the paramilitary.
Like,
did I say Hitler? Did I say with
I'm just saying,
Nazi
you're talking about the SS,
intelligence?
these are paramilitaries. And
Did I say
with
Hitler? Did I say with Nazi intelligence? Because we do have evidence that he was meeting with Nazi intelligence officials to form these battalions.
Oh, the flaws in the narrative, I like it.
That's exactly what I simulate my words. Listen, at the end of the day, I do agree with you, though. Azov something. I do agree with you. I do agree with you because you said.
I want to go from Adam to and then infrared after.
So I want to.
He's calling him Azov something.
It's not. It wasn't the invasion of Poland. It was the special military operation into Poland. Okay, let's keep it straight, guys. Okay.
Yeah, that's an argument devoid of substance. It is very.
Nice.
It was very clear that the invasion of Poland started World War II. and the Soviet Union was not at that time, and Britain did not declare war on the Soviet Union, nor did
Despite
the Polish
Soviet
government
efforts to become part of the Axis.
nor did the Polish government in exile blame the Soviet Union for any invasion. Now, second of all, I wanted to ask you this question about a more contemporary event. I wanted to know about these acts of neo-Nazi violence that were, as Destiny put it, just part of the war. Was the Odessa Massacre just part of the war?
Massacre was an incident where a pro-Russian mob met a pro-Ukrainian mob, and the pro-Ukrainian mob turned out to be about 3 times larger than the pro-Russian mob, and they actually pushed the pro-Russians into this building. I don't know, trade unions have something like that, and they pushed them into this building. And it's blurry what happened next, but like Molotovs and stones started.
The International Criminal Court has already done a preliminary examination onto this.
Like the building caught fire.
I was going to say real quick, international courts have also ruled there's not a genocide happening in the Donbass, so you can't pick and choose when you want to side with international courts. Sorry, Adam, keep going.
Oh yeah, sure. So at that point, it was like most people died, I think, of the stampede and the smoke, because the building was actually set on fire. And then afterwards, that was pretty much the end. So actually, a few months later, there was like a sort of terror bombing of.
I like how he glazed over that.
Like civilians, a couple of them died, but like that was.
A couple of them died.
The next.
This guy is such an asshole.
Started launching like cruise missiles at like residential neighborhoods, as in now. But that was basically the gist of the Odessa massacre, which wasn't really a massacre. It was two mobs meeting with like stones and Molotovs and whatnot.
So, yeah, I mean,
as during the Civil War.
That's a great attempt to whitewash a horrific act of neo-Nazi.
I know. I mean, this is what happened.
But we have countless others. Hold on, but we have other countless instances of violence at the time. There was the crucifixion of Russians. There was the disappearance.
That's a fake, though. That the crucifixion didn't really happen, though.
Well, I saw it on video, so I don't know how it could be fake. And there's this journalist who, I don't know, just disappeared somehow. I mean, there was a clear campaign of intimidation, terror, and violence.
This guy has been caught lying so many times in this debate. He should be eliminated. He should be eliminated just for being a straight fucking liar.
We're talking about Ukraine right now.
He'll just lie to make a point. He'll be like, I saw a video of it. He's like.
The point is that there's a campaign of violence against people who represent the opinion of the Russian-speaking population in East Ukraine. You said earlier that the Russian-speaking population in Ukraine is anti-Russian. Well, how would you even know that if victims of a systemic campaign of terrorism and violence and intimidation?
Like who?
Like the various Russian journalists. I can't name them off the top of my head.
Oh,
Wait, what's a single, like we hear when journalists are killed during these conflicts, it's a really big deal. We hear about it in Israel. It happened recently. The IDF murdered or killed a journalist during, they say it was accidental fire or whatever. Are you, just so I can understand, are you implying that like Ukraine is murdering a bunch of Russian journalists, but we just haven't heard about it at all?
Well, there are several missing journalists.
Can you answer that question instead of like...
They were literally shelling Russian journalists.
Oh, actually, Russians actually killed, I think, a Reuters journalist or a French journalist. He died of like artillery shrapnel. And
what's your evidence that by Russians? Because he was actually in Donetsk, and French President Emmanuel Macron didn't even say that he was killed by Russians. So he left it vague. What's your evidence, since you know more than Emmanuel Macron?
Side, though, like unless Ukrainians shelled their own positions, then sure.
Shelling their own positions in Donetsk.
Because
what an idiot.
They have positions in Donetsk, in the city center of Donetsk.
This guy's an idiot. Again, called on another lie that he just pulls out of his ass.
It didn't happen in the city center. Look it up.
Adam, you made the claim that it was just a bunch of random people that stormed the Odessa Trade Union House on that May 2nd when they slaughtered dozens and dozens of people. You
50.
leave out the part that it was Andrei Parubey who was in Odessa meeting with many of the individuals who were responsible for the violent acts that took place there that day, in the days leading up to that trade union hall massacre. And this was a guy who was the leader of the Society to erect a Stefan Bandera monument. This was clearly an act carried out again with the same intent of all these Nazis to try and slaughter a popular resistance movement that was peaceful. It was just people sitting out in front of a trade union house to this coup government that was installed by the U.S.
Yeah, so I found the article. You were lying. They were not in Donetsk. They were on the way to Severodonetsk, so they were on Ukrainian territory.
Where were they coming from? Where were they coming from?
Their driver.
Where were they coming from?
Wait, hold on. Which are we talking about? In March, when journalists were on the way to Kiev?
No. This was
because that was one time where those journalists, I think we watched videos of that, where they were ambushed by Russian recon squad. There was video of that. where you can see them getting shot at.
Well,
like,
that's
through
not
their
what we're
cars,
talking
everything.
about.
Okay,
Adam,
that's
so
that
do you
was just
deny
one
that?
issue of,
Adam,
that's just
Adam,
one issue of Russia
Adam.
shooting at journalists. But go ahead.
Adam, do you deny that it was a government-organized event on May 2nd that resulted in dozens of people who were anti-coup government who were killed?
Is it Odessa right now? Like,
What?
are we talking about
Odessa.
We talking about Odessa? Okay. It wasn't a government organized thing. The government didn't even exist basically at that point, or it didn't have much power over. I mean, if the Ukrainian government had power to organize protests just like this in cities far away from Kiev, like 6 hours of driving, then the events in Ukraine.
Well, Andrei Parubey wasn't the leader of a mass political movement that then went on to become the government of Ukraine in 2014.
Where is Andrei Parubey's political party now? So
he was the chair of the Verkhovna Rada for 5 years.
Good. And how come Ukrainian far-right parties have 1 seat out of 450 now?
What's now got to do with it?
Zelensky's regime replaced them, but at the end of the day,
Why is
they
he
held
talking about
power
now?
for
He's
5
talking about
years.
2014.
Wait, do they not have elections, or what do you mean?
Jackson,
by that?
don't let him railroad you, bro.
Zelensky is a centrist, centrist Russian native speaker, Jewish, centrist liberal,
I'll agree with you. I'll agree with you there. I think Zelensky's campaign messaging was great. He wanted peace. He didn't want the persecution and the discrimination of ethnic Russians in Ukraine.
Greenie.
But clearly, he's lost that battle, and he's now affected by these same forces that held power from 2014 to 2019, like Andrei
Do you have a
Parubey.
source on that? Do you have any source?
We literally have videos of Zelensky going bravely, I think, to the front lines with the Azov commanders in the Donbass, meeting with them, asking them to put down their arms and to talk about this. And they say, we'll talk with you, but we're not going to stop fighting, because that's you. They didn't want to stop fighting, and there's clear video evidence released by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry about all of this.
So it would be, I think, easier to disarm neo-Nazis in Ukraine and to sort of stem the tide of this neo-Nazi resurgence, which is, I guess, it's happening according to you. It would be like, if you're concerned.
Wait, do you deny that that's happening?
1 second. If you are concerned about the resurgence of extremism in certain places, then I think we should agree that the best solution for that is for larger countries to stop fucking with the smaller country in which this resurgence is happening. Why does ISIS exist, for example? Well, U.S. interventionism, right? The U.S. went in, guns blazing, and destabilized the region, and then whoops, this caused a surge of extremism. Now, in Ukraine, this didn't actually cause a surge, though.
I agree with you. I agree with you. The U.S.
in your framework.
No, I agree with you. Larger countries should stop fucking with smaller countries, meaning the U.S. should start. The U.S. should stop arming the Nazis in Ukraine. I agree with
as
you.
long as Russia leaves Ukraine, and give them back everything, including Crimea.
Isn't that what they were trying to get done in the Minsk Accords?
No.
Nope.
They weren't trying
you
to
think
stop.
the Minsk Accords
They
were
weren't trying to
give back
stop.
Crimea?
They weren't trying to stop the Ukrainian Donbass with U.S. arms.
No, they were trying to cause a ceasefire to happen in an area where they were backing a civil war, where they've already broken off territory from a sovereign country.
Ceasefire and a civil war. I understand now. Into this
Those people didn't have any weapons.
Ukraine propaganda mindset.
They had no weapons. They had no guns. They had no artillery.
Okay, so who is this civil
They didn't
war
have
between?
tanks.
Was it not between
They had
Nazis
nothing.
and rebels in the Donbass?
No,
it
right
was
now the
Ukrainian-
civil war is backed by the Russian military against the Ukrainian military. That's what the
What
war
about the
is
past
right now.
8 years?
Since 2014, Russia has had official military people. It's not even a secret on the ground in the Donbass. Yeah, of course.
They haven't had them there the entire time. That's actually
Yes, of
incorrect.
course they have. What do you mean?
That's incorrect.
When you say
There's a
not the
video-
entire time, then so are you admitting that they were there?
They definitely were there at different periods throughout the 8 years, but they weren't there the entire time or the majority of the time.
They have been there the majority of the time. What do you think about the
That's
civilian
incorrect.
airliner they got?
Preliminary examination. That's incorrect. They do highlight the different periods in which Russians went to the joint operation zone, as they refer to it. But it was only a few times. Now, were they providing artillery and heavy artillery at different times to the rebels there? Yeah. But they weren't there the entire
They
time
weren't
or the
just
majority of the
providing
time.
military, like the platforms that these people would use platforms to shoot down things, like Malaysian Airlines Flight 17. These were platforms that couldn't be operated by random people with no idea.
And the
require
Ukrainians
Russian
had
military
heavier
personnel.
artillery.
Okay, and the Ukrainian, their country, I would expect them to use heavy artillery to secure their country.
Well, I
That
don't
doesn't
think it is
justify
their country. In 2014, the people in Donetsk and Lugansk voted overwhelmingly to become independent states.
That's not
That's
how that
gunpoint.
works. You can't just vote away to break away from a country. Do you
Well,
think the European Union will be
they try to do it in the United
invading
States all the
Scotland and
time.
holding them hostage
States
because
try
they
to
wanted to
succeed
stay
here
in
all
the
the
EU
time.
when the United Kingdom voted to leave? Like, No, wait. I want Jackson to answer that. Do you think that if the European Union had put together an army and invaded Scotland, would they be able to hold on to that because they voted to stay in the European Union and the rest of the United Kingdom voted to leave? Do you think that'd be justified?
Comparison here. At the end of the day, the people of Donetsk and Lugansk were facing not just harassment, not just discrimination and torture, but also death as a result of the Ukrainians.
Hold on. You're not answering the question.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Let me answer the question. I wasn't done answering. You interrupted me halfway through. I was answering the question.
Holy shit.
So let's just put this in perspective. If Donald Trump were president and he started, mobilizing U.S. military personnel to slaughter people in Los Angeles County, and Los Angeles County decided that they wanted to vote to break away from the United States and form their own sovereign independent, just be that they randomly voted, something caused that to happen. And at the end of the day, it would have been the violence that ensued from whichever government in power. And that government in Ukraine was installed by a U.S.-backed coup. And it was an illegal impeachment that didn't
That's a
actually have votes
mukbang,
to
Greeny.
impeach
What do you mean?
Yanukovych.
You missed my mukbang.
So-
What's that mean?
When do you think the civil war in the Donbass started?
It started
2014.
It started to pick up speed after the coup took place.
But when did it
So
start?
it started after Russia
That's
won,
not an accurate.
No.
and then after. And
No,
what do you mean?
it started
no? Do you
after
disagree with the timeline,
it started after the coup of Viktor Yanukovych.
So it started after Russia invaded and stole Crimea, and then it started after Russia was
That's
mobilizing
incorrect.
troops
What
in
happened
the Donbass
before Crimea?
to begin that
What
war.
happened before Crimea?
There was an
Who?
ousting of a prior leader who started shooting at civilians with police officers. I mean, what do you mean?
I mean, what do you
That's
mean?
not true. We already had this debate. I wrecked you in this debate. You tried to
didn't
make
wreck
the
anything.
argument.
All you
Hold
can
on.
point to is a phone call between two ambassadors saying they
Hold
prefer
on,
one leader
for
to another,
purposes-
and then you think that that's evidence
Hold on.
of a coup
For
being
purposes
staged.
of clarification, even historically,
It doesn't matter that it's new.
Hold on, hold
Ukraine
on.
was recognized in
Sure, but let me
1991
finish
by
my
every
point.
other sovereign country in the
Yeah,
world.
I'd
That
like
state
to
could have
finish-
started existing in
I'd like to
2010.
finish. I'd like to finish my point. So, the founding of Ukraine, which is an extremely new state, the idea of this unified territory being encompassed by one sovereign state, that was founded on the premise that everyone was going to have equal representation, whether they're Russian-speaking or Ukraine-speaking, right, in the West. And it just so happens that the person who was ousted, as you mentioned, was overwhelmingly the representative of Ukraine. So after that coup, which ousted the person that represented their stake in Ukrainian sovereignty, I don't see how Ukraine can continue to lay claim to this territory.
Because they held elections after he was ousted.
But how was he
It's
ousted?
not
Was
like-
it illegal
Those
impeachment?
elections were
Was it?
considered illegitimate.
Wait,
Oh, that's right, it was an
Those
illegal
elections are
impeachment.
considered illegitimate, not like the ones that happened in
By the
Crimea
people who
after
did-
Russia invaded. Well, he didn't get impeached. He ran away because he knew he was
No,
probably
yeah,
gonna
they
get fucked
tried
for
to
having his
impeach him.
police officers murdering civilians. in
Was
the
it illegal?
street.
Was it illegal impeachment?
No, but they held legal elections afterwards.
Did he leave the country before that took
Wow.
place?
Jackson just owned you.
No. Where did
bro.
he go to?
He ran to Russia.
No, he didn't.
Where did he go?
He went to Kharkiv.
First to Kharkiv, from Kharkiv he went to Russia.
Kharkiv, and then they had the right when he left for Kharkiv. First of all, they started to rain hellfire down with snipers on what they thought was his group of cars that was leaving the city, and then they stormed his own personal home and government buildings. Do you not think that that's a coup, considering the fact that he hadn't left the country? You admit that it was not a legal impeachment, right?
Do you think that a coup usually is democratic elections that occur afterwards? Is that a coup to you? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it can. It
Yeah.
definitely can.
Okay,
You
so a
can
coup
oust-
can be there is just rioting.
Yes,
a
because
leader,
I'll
the
why.
leader flees from his
Yes.
country, which he did, and then afterwards they
No,
hold
okay.
democratic
No.
elections,
So
and that's a coup.
Let's not pretend that him fleeing was the pretext for choosing a new leader. There was sniper fire against him as he was trying to supposedly leave, or as he was trying to leave, to correct myself. There was a raiding, as Jackson put it, of his office. So there was clearly an intent to oust Yanukovych before he left. Now, Yanukovych is the guy that the people of Eastern Ukraine voted for. They're not going to recognize any new... That would be like Trump deciding that he's not going to accept the election, and he's going to...
But hold on, but literally, Putin came out and said he would accept the elections of the Ukraine presidential election after he left.
The people of Eastern Ukraine weren't... They're not the puppets of Putin. They disagreed. They didn't accept those elections because they voted for Yanukovych.
What?
Now, in their view, if we're going to vote for someone and they're just going to decide that they're going to be able to coup them, like, why should they...
He didn't just get couped; he fled.
Well,
No,
there
the
was an
Verkhovna,
intent
that's
to
factually
oust-
incorrect. The Verkhovna Rada said that he was no longer president. They declared him no longer president and installed an interim president prior
Hold on,
to
the interim president was the
Destiny,
leader.
can I,
Was the
hey,
leader
hey,
of the majority party.
modern day
It's
debates.
not-
Can I have a
Sorry,
sentence
stop.
here?
Oh,
I was in the
so
middle of
much
a sentence.
misinformation. Go ahead.
Okay.
Jackson.
The Verkhovna Rada had already placed an interim president in his place while Viktor Yanukovych was still in Kharkiv, by the way, and you admit that they're actually legally impeaching him. Therefore, this was an illegal seizure of power.
Wow.
The interim president that was installed. Who was this guy?
Let me pull up his
Who
name.
cares?
It was before Poroshenko.
It was the leader of the opposition party. It wasn't just a random guy. It was already somebody that was like massively popular in their electoral. It wasn't just a random dude that they.
Popular among portions of Western Ukraine. He was not representative of the.
I'm just saying, when you say installed a new leader, you make it sound like they picked a random dude.
He was installed because again they were 10 voting Yanukovych.
They were 10 vote shots before, but after the people started getting shot in the streets, I'm pretty sure that like literally everybody but 6 people voted for the impeachment afterwards.
All international observers.
One second.
I think Jackson maybe 30 seconds or so uninterrupted, and then promise we'll come back to the next person.
I mean, I didn't have a lot to say other than I'm still looking up the name of this guy that was before Poroshenko, if you want me to say that we discussed this Destiny last time and you kind of made a fool of yourself, but most independent experts that are investigating what took place in the Euromaidan Square protest recognize that it was Euromaidan controlled snipers, specifically Georgian snipers, that were responsible for the deaths in the Euromaidan Square. The Ukrainian security personnel thought that it was Euromaidan forces that were responsible for this. And everyone, regardless, does agree that the snipers were firing from Euromaidan control. Everyone does agree on.
Jackson, actually, real quickly, I think you either didn't know or you lied about the timeline of Yanukovych's escape. Viktor Yanukovych left Kiev on the 21st of February and then turned up in Moscow on the 26th of February, 2014. Now, the first Yatsenyuk government was formed the day after, on the 27th of February. And at that...
They declared that he was no longer president, because that's what I was pointing out here.
Oh, I think that's at this point is irrelevant. If we want to go back to
that's extremely relevant, idiot. If he's still in Ukraine,
Hey, idiot.
If he's still in Ukraine,
let me finish.
Jackson will come right back to you, and then
Sure.
I just want to hear from maybe 30 seconds from Adam.
Sure, I just want to add this. And if you want to go by popular vote,
Hey,
in
idiot.
April 2014, according to a Razumkov Center poll, only 4.9% of Ukrainians would have wanted to see Yanukovych return to the presidency. So
okay. First of all, Destiny, his name was Alexander Tuchnov. I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Turchinov.
Second of all, yes, it does matter if Viktor Yanukovych is still in Ukraine, specifically in Kharkiv, the second biggest city at the time in Ukraine. If they are declaring him no longer president, set up the new government, but if they're declaring him no longer president, they were 10 votes short of getting a legal impeachment. Yes, that does matter because they are illegally forcing him out of power.
So are you like some like centrist liberal now, like the law, that we can't have a revolution?
Yeah, I think the constitutional law in Ukraine is pretty important when you're talking about the illegal seizure of power. Apparently, you don't think so.
In that case, we will never have a glorious socialist revolution because then it can just like be voted down.
Why are you?
So to be clear, Ukrainian members of parliament voted to oust Yanukovych on the 25th of May.
They were 10 votes short of achieving an impeachment. There was an impeachment vote.
Okay, well, all I've seen is that they voted him out. So are you saying that that's not true?
Well, remember last time when Dylan Burns tried to argue that he was legally impeached, and then we had to go to the vote tally and show that they were 10 votes short of getting 3/4 of a legal impeachment?
Was this before police officers were firing on civilians, or?
So do you think that the allegation?
Because I see here that the vote to remove Viktor Yanukovych from the post of president of Ukraine was passed by 328 members of parliament.
Because they shut me down so
such
often.
ballots passed by
now
what
I
is called
broadcast
constitutional
6
majority are
channels.
binding and enter into force with immediate effect. So
Hold on. According to Ukrainian law, they were 10 short of the necessary requirement to get.
Was this before police were firing on civilians?
I want to ask you that question. Do you think that an allegation of police firing on civilians is
video of police firing on civilians?
Is that grounds for the dissolution of free sovereignty, which is their constitutional law?
I don't think their sovereignty was
Live fire has been used against protesters in several countries across their history, not discounting the United States. Does that mean that the law and the constitutional law should be suspended
No, but if the people of Ukraine disagreed with what was happening, I would have expected that to be reflected in some
that's what
vote
you're not
afterwards. But that
understanding.
isn't.
The people of Ukraine were divided, and Yanukovych represented the people in the east.
Based on the poll that
4.8%
Adam
more
just
people.
gave me, and based on the MP's vote to oust Yanukovych, it doesn't sound
No,
like
they were 10
divided
votes
at
short.
all.
Why do you keep bringing this up? They were 10 votes short.
4.8% wanted Yanukovych to remain in power. So
Matter. The
Where are you
law,
getting
the
that
law
from?
of the land
Because
said
of
that you need
polls?
338 votes to get a legal impeachment. That's 3/4 of the Verkhovna Rada. They only had 328. Even U.S. pressure, London's pressure, they were
US
still
pressure.
10 votes short of actually impeaching him while he was still in the country, and they declared that he was no longer president. You understand how that's a problem, right?
Okay, so this is my timeline
guess
that
not.
I'm understanding. Tell me if you agree with this one. So there was a vote initially that you're talking about that failed by 10 members of parliament, right? Then the police deaths happened. The shooting on the protest and everything happened. Then there was another vote on February 22nd, and then afterwards Yanukovych fled. And then on May 25th, there was an election. That wasn't the second impeachment, but I believe on February 22nd, they voted to oust him. No?
February 27th?
22nd.
22nd
I'll link this,
was...
or maybe you can just say this is a fake vote, okay? But on the
no,
22nd
that's incorrect. In fact, it was February 23rd in which they took the impeachment vote, according to what I have here. Maybe, I don't
Link me
know.
what you have, because what I have here is a BBC article on the 22nd saying Ukrainian MPs vote to oust President Yanukovych.
So that was probably, I mean, it's a BBC article. That's probably them announcing that they were about to take this vote. And then, yeah, on February 23rd, they vote short.
Why are you arguing this one point, guys?
Can you link me that? Show me that.
Okay.
So
You
articles
need
can
to
be
give it to
updated.
Jackson. He
I don't
won this
know,
point
but-
and
The
move
article
on.
is not updated.
Jackson won this
Well,
point
Then Jackson's
15 minutes
explanation is
ago.
probably the most.
Destiny, I think we have a problem. I think I heard BBC is run by George Soros.
Point is, it was
Jackson
an
likes to
illegal
mention him a lot.
impeachment.
That's a
So
completely.
that might
That's
be
all he
any
needs to
suspicious. Oh yeah, like infra.
say.
If
It
I
was
were you,
illegal.
I wouldn't talk. Like, didn't you debate like the Destiny, like when you teamed up with Nick Fuentes, like a neo-Nazi?
Again, you're bringing up all these insubstantial comments and arguments. I don't know why you would pivot to something completely irrelevant. Maybe it's because you're
Even
losing.
if we want to, and even if we want to move forward in this conversation, even if theoretically we were to grant every single thing that's vote and that this was like a coup or whatever, this is a bad thing, none of this gives Russia the right to invade the country, right? Even if I wouldn't grant all of that, but even if I did grant all of that,
Destiny,
Yeah,
I just
I agree.
sent.
That alone
Destiny, I
is
just
not-
sent it to you. It's resolution of the Verkhovna Rada of February 23rd, 2014, 10 votes short of getting a legal impeachment. So I was right.
link
and
me
you
the
were-
article.
and you
link
were
me
wrong.
Link me your in chat what you're talking about.
I just sent it to you on Twitter DMs. I'm on my.
Why
I'm
would
on
you
my.
send it on Twitter? Just send it on Zoom.
You don't have Twitter?
I don't feel like opening my fucking Twitter.
Well, I don't feel like doing this again on my PC. I just did it for you on my laptop. Are you incapable of using Twitter?
Yeah, I am. I think Soros is reading my DMs. So
Okay.
the platform.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that alone would justify a Russian invasion, but
I agree.
you would have to do some serious revisions about the events that led to that to make it seem like that's even their justification.
But just for the record, I was right and you were wrong. So you can
Yeah,
apologize for being wrong about that
Yeah, sure.
anytime you want.
So going through the article.
I love it. I love Jackson's attitude, man. Just
Yeah,
for
I
the
mean,
record, I was
if
right.
they
You were
were-
wrong.
even
You
if
can
their
apologize.
revolutions work, that's how regime changes work.
What are you
So-
talking about? He was still in the country. This was a violent seizure of power,
He
and they
fled-
didn't
he fled
get
on his own
enough
volition.
votes to impeach him. So you're the argument
Jackson
you're
debates
making
two
is like,
people
well,
at a time,
you know,
man.
it's okay because there were some people who wanted this, despite the fact that the constitutional 3/4 majority was not met. That's like if you were to say like, oh, well, yeah, there's a bunch of people in the United States who don't like Joe Biden, so therefore we should just illegally
So wait.
seize the power.
Okay, let me just read.
Adam
Let's
is
just
saying-
read.
Adam
Let's
is
just
saying-
read. This is the source that
Hold on,
Jackson said.
Adam
Let's
is
just
one
let-
thing. Adam's
let-
saying something. He's saying
Why don't-
something pretty interesting.
let's just read this because this is what Jackson said. Okay.
Hold on, let me just. I just want to respond really quickly to what Adam said. You're saying that it was a revolution and we can just suspend the law. Well, I think the people in the Donbass would say the same thing when they decided to declare independent republics. That was their revolution. And you're saying
under Russian
95%
guns.
of people, if polls constituted grounds we wouldn't even have elections. We would just take polls. Obviously, polling
Yes,
is not going to be reliable.
those elections were made under Russian gunpoint, so that's a way different situation. I
Do
don't
you
know if
have
want
any?
to get
All right,
into
so
that.
are you
It's
trying to
super
say that the
complicated.
people of Donetsk and Lugansk are not overwhelmingly in favor of?
When in Donetsk and Luhansk, there were
Top of
more
the
Russian
hour, it's time to
sentiment,
smoke,
ironically because
Jackson.
of the Russian propagandizing for that went on there.
Oh, so they're either being
This is also
brainwashed or
interesting.
it's at
One
a
sec.
gunpoint,
One
right?
sec.
So
One
you
sec.
just-
One sec. Just 1 second. So this is a very complicated conversation. Interesting nonetheless. I don't know.
Cheers,
I don't know
guys.
if you want to get into it though. Lots of nuance. But the thing is, Russia has been actively propagandizing in the south and east of Ukraine, the Russian-speaking part, through their media empire. It's like imagine like a 24/7 Newsmax. Oh
Yeah, I understand. It's just funny to the United in the Anglosphere, and obviously the United States dominates as far as soft power media is concerned. So if you want to talk about people being brainwashed by media, I mean, what kind of ideas were inspiring the people at the Maidan? It was
as bad
US propaganda.
as bad as U.S. media can be.
Cheers,
the
everybody.
Russian media and Russia propagandizing is an entirely different beast. Don't worry about it. It's
Yeah, but
the
that's
same-
like
it's the same
your
thing as-
opinion. That's like
No,
your
no,
opinion.
no,
And not
no, no.
like
No,
someone
look
could
it
say
up.
the same thing about the United States
So
media.
I would say Russian state media is like Fox News on agenda. Like it's like a nonstop.
But the difference is that Russian media hasn't led to the wholesale destruction of places like Iraq, Libya, and the Middle East.
Oh, well,
and
it
rise.
led to the destruction of now the Russian-speaking parts of Ukraine. So I don't know what you're talking about. It seems
No,
like these
that
seems like
destruction
these reactionary
That
states.
destruction was overwhelmingly caused by the Ukrainian paramilitaries in North.
The Ukrainians destroyed Mariupol just for fun,
As
right?
of
And, like, all
something
these
is a
cities, like,
is
the
a
pictures of the-
That's what
Ukrainian
the civilians
shield.
say. You know, I didn't think this debate was going to be as
Civilians did
easy
not
as you
say
guys
that.
are
That is
making
not
it.
true.
Yeah,
This
What?
this this
Can I read what
debate
Jackson
this
left me on
debate
the
is
line?
actually
Your
incredible.
polls are reliable,
Destiny, do you want to talk about
Hinkle
this?
jumping in
The
with
the
the
evidence I
desires.
put forward that there was a vote on
Yeah, can I-
February 23rd,
can I-
2014 to confer
Wait,
the
can I just
powers
read what
of the
you sent me?
president of
Wait, why are you so
Ukraine,
scared of
of
me
the
reading what you sent
chairman
me?
of the Verkhovna Rada,
Destiny,
and they were
please do.
10
I
don't
votes short
understand.
of getting an impeachment.
I don't understand. Can I just read what you sent me, or are you going to interrupt me? Is that okay? This is what you sent me, so I should be able to read it.
I asked you a question and you interrupt me as if I'm the one
Oh
interrupting
my
you.
god, dude!
You're literally
like you're
insane.
It's like
You're
unbelievable.
literally
And I
insane.
mean this in the most like might
Don't
be
read
like
it, Destiny,
borderline
don't do it.
schizophrenic. I swear.
Don't do it.
And I
Okay.
hope you find help.
I love
Okay,
you, Jackson.
So,
that was
linking
awesome.
what Jackson linked me, which was a Wikipedia article. The Ukrainian Revolution of February 2014 took place after a series of violent events towards protesters in the capital Kyiv that culminated with the flight and subsequent then president of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych, who was then removed from the office. There were no articles of impeachment against Verkhovna Rada committee voted on February 22nd, 2014. MPs voted to remove Viktor Yanukovych from the post of president of Ukraine on the grounds that he was unable to fulfill his duties and to hold early. The vote came an hour after Yanukovych said in a televised address that he would not resign. He subsequently declared himself to still be the legitimate head of the Ukrainian state, elected in a free vote by Ukrainian citizens. The action did not follow the impeachment process as specified by the Constitution of Ukraine, which would have required a whole official putting forth impeachment charges and everything. But there was a vote that they held to oust him as president because in order for the government to continue functioning, they needed to do so because he had abandoned his post.
Is
So
that an unconstitutional vote or is that a constitutional?
I guess, but it's all, he left. And so to quote your thing, instead, the Verkhovna Rada declared that Yanukovych, quote, constitutional matter, unquote, and cited, quote, circumstances of extreme urgency, end quote, as the reason for early elections.
Destiny, he was still in Kharkiv when they took this vote, and the vote says, quote, to confer the powers of the president of Ukraine on chairman of the Verkhovna Rada, which was Torchnya Alexander, whatever his name is. And this is literally
Is
an
Kharkov
attempted
where the government
illegal
is ran?
seizure of power. And as you put it, an ouster of
really.
Viktor Yanukovych. They were 10 votes short of any to actually move through with this ouster. Yeah, it's incredible.
To do the impeachment, they weren't able to get the votes for it, but to actually oust him to make sure the government continued to function, it seemed like they voted almost unanimously to do so.
It's
But
an
that
illegal
was not
seizure
a
of power,
Biden-
though. He's still in the country. There's no reason for there to be an ouster other
Well,
than
the reason
they are
they
trying to
cited
impeach
was
him.
because the guy
Look,
fled
Destiny,
from government, and there was no
Destiny,
way to run the government.
Destiny, I was really bad at math in high school, but I'm pretty sure
Hold on, wait, do you acknowledge that he left the
328. I'm
government?
pretty
Do you
sure
acknowledge that he left the government?
328
Do you acknowledge
votes
that
is
he- do you acknowledge that he
138
left the
votes.
government?
I think so. I think so.
Do you acknowledge that he fled? That he
Guys,
left,
one
he left the
second.
government?
The vote took place while he was in Kharkiv. But yeah, he did flee
Is
to
Kharkiv
Russia.
where you're
He did,
supposed to be to
he
be,
did
like,
flee
head
to
of the state?
Russia.
Is that where you're-
Hold on,
He
to
fled
answer
to
this
Russia
question-
after snipers
Hold
rained
on.
down hellfire on his band of cars that they
After
thought
he
he was
ordered
in.
police
And then
to
there was a
assassinate
violent
protesters?
there was a violent
What about-
incursion into his office and his actual primary residence. So yeah, after that all took place, he went to Russia, but he was still in Kharkiv.
So the argument here is that if a head of state is evacuating the capital, because that is not the same as stepping down from government. If there's,
I agree with that, and they didn't follow their impeachment process, but they did vote 328-0 to remove him from his post.
And they were
Actually, I actually have one important thing to add. At that point, after the firings, etc., I believe the reason why they didn't have the constitutional majority is because Yanukovych's party kind of just fled also and disbanded, and they basically all went to Russia. So I think that was the reason why they didn't have the majority, even though they voted 328-0, basically.
But you just called it a revolution.
It was. Fuck yeah.
So,
Dude, like,
so you agree that
it
was not following the procedures of the form of Ukraine's sovereignty enshrined in its constitution.
It was following it, so not exclusive.
They
He's an idiot.
definitely are incompatible. If it's going to be a revolution, then you're going to overthrow the.
It was following the
prior
law. It
legal
was a
order, the
revolution.
sovereign order.
What?
So they didn't.
These guys are psychotic.
So the legal order wasn't really overthrown. Like the same legal system.
Our boys are
constitutional
destroying these two
requirement
clowns,
met, or
man.
was it not met?
It seems like the constitutional requirement for impeachment wasn't met, but the reasons why were extraordinary. It seemed like they didn't want to go through the process.
But the Ukraine's legal order does not allow.
Can we like use our can we actually use our brains a little bit, or is it really going to be this?
I would love to.
Like, if we look at
Destiny
this- if
is
we
that
look
they
at this
didn't
coup,
have
well,
enough
look at
votes.
this coup.
Destiny.
After the president.
Sorry, but
The
people can't hear you.
violence.
Can,
The
okay,
violence of
after,
the
can I just do
Maidan-
my 30 seconds and they can respond? So they didn't go through formal impeachment charges because the country was literally in fucking chaos. They didn't want to run the courts and run the thing to figure out so they had a vote in their parliament to see what they should do. Did he abandon his post? When they took that vote, the Rada voted 328-0 to remove him from the government so that the government could continue to function so that the country wouldn't fall into chaos. After they voted to oust him, they held democratic elections and followed their democratic process afterwards. That seems to be what happened. Now, if you want to call that like an illegal coup or seizure of power, that's fine, you can do that, but don't pretend that he was just like kicked out of the government and they installed a new leader or whatever. That's not what happened.
You can't have democratic elections to replace a president if you have an illegal ouster of said president. You just can't do
Especially
it.
when you consider that the entire pretext of him leaving the capital was mass violence being conducted by the by the people living in Kiev, who were not acting as the representatives of the entire people of Ukraine. So if that's the pretext for him leaving in the first place, of course it would not be legal according to any democratic constitution.
Why did he leave the country?
Because of the threats of violence he was facing.
Why didn't Zelensky leave the country?
Zelensky's well protected wherever he is.
Zelensky is what you told me on this platform, I think a month ago, that Russia was going to control Kiev in literally 3 days. You're telling me that Zelensky is well protected with the Russian military invading his country, but you're telling me that Yanukovych was under massive threat because of some riots?
Not only riots, but various sniper fire. He didn't have Yanukovych did not have the Ukrainian security apparatus.
He literally did. The whole Belarus or whatever police force was still protecting him. Of course. What do you mean?
You understand though that those police forces were being sniped from the Euromaidan Square. So they were literally killing police officers and civilians.
Is there any actual evidence of sniper fire? Is that a real thing? Can you show me that?
What?
Sniper fire on police officers by protesters.
What do you mean?
massive
Is there
sniper
evidence of
fire.
sniper fire? You're the one who the entire time throughout this debate you've been saying that there was sniper fire on protesters.
No, what
throughout
I
the
said was that.
Yes, you
what I
did. You said was that before.
No.
Okay, well, I'm glad we have video evidence. The entire time you've been saying. You've been saying Destiny. Shut the fuck up for a second. Destiny.
We got video evidence of it. I didn't
Rap God, stop talking. So you've been saying throughout this entire debate that was it before or was it after the sniper fire began on the protesters? I don't know how many times you've said this. You're like a broken record, and now you're saying that there wasn't sniper fire, and you want proof of sniper fire
I said
on
that
people?
the police do you want to bet like $10 on it if I said there was sniper fire from police on protesters, or if I just said police fired on protesters?
You said sniper fire.
I said police fired on protesters.
You said sniper fire.
Do you want to bet on it? Do you want to bet $10?
Sure, I'll bet $10.
Okay,
Is
we'll bet
this the
$10.
level
You give me
we're
the
on?
words. If
All
I
right.
did say it, I misspoke. And what I've said a million times is that police officers fired on protesters. They absolutely did. There's video evidence looked at by third parties. You can go and watch it right now. It's
Georgian
undeniable.
were controlled by the Euromaidan protesters. Yeah, I agree.
No, they were literally the yellow whatever wearing police officers. You can see them in their police officer protected positions.
That's a
shooting
convincing
on
argument, yellow wearing police officers, but what I can tell you is that Georgian police officers have actually admitted to this in testimonies.
You're just lying.
Joe, you never come in and talk about it, man.
If you want,
We're doing a debate. We're watching a debate right now.
admitted to this.
You come in when I'm doing it, when I'm watching a debate.
and you can watch.
I
videos
literally
put
go
together
3
by
times a day, bro.
Hey, listen,
Seriously.
listen.
Thousands of hours of cell phone video footage, and it put
You're
together
like a
you can
psycho
see directly
bitch.
police shooting from areas into protester areas. You can see them shooting and killing protesters. It's like.
Yeah.
It's like
also,
super,
it's like
yeah.
last time though the last story was that the snipers were Polish. Now they're Georgian. I'm glad they just I guess changed with the wind. But no, what we disagree with is that protesters, or Azov battalion or members or whatever, or right sector members were sniping police.
You're like,
There were
yeah, I am a
firefights,
psycho
but
bitch.
the massive sniping of protesters happened by the police.
That's incorrect.
Happy
In fact, there was a
7/10.
forensic ballistic examination conducted by
go
the
and-
government.
I want to confess you, but I don't want to walk away
Adam,
from this
you just
debate.
put out a
So
false
goddamn
statement.
good.
Put out a
Wait,
false
wait,
statement.
Let him finish. Let Jackson finish. I've
Yeah,
heard this,
there was a
conspiracy theory
forensic
before.
ballistic examination which showed that the bullet samples, factors, and police alike, in police databases, did not match up to the assault rifles that the Berkut Kalashnikov was using. In
That's
addition
not
to that,
true.
we also have the Georgian military who testified that they and other groups of Maidan snipers in the Hotel Ukraina and the Music Conservatory were ordered by specific Maidan leaders and ex-Georgian leaders to fire on police and protesters, and that they witnessed the massacre.
The
this is just like
idea
general
that there
disinfo.
I just want to be clear on this. So you're telling me that you don't believe police officers ever fired and killed up protesters?
Now you're giving me you're an absolute statement. Maybe, I don't know. But what I do know is that the deaths that we saw in the Euromaidan Square on that bloody day, where there was several dozen people killed by snipers at the control of the Euromaidan protesters and organizers.
Okay, so when I tell you that what is it? The bear.
We're just gonna move past the ballistic evidence and act like that didn't happen. Cool, got it. Go on.
I don't know if you want to show me ballistic evidence. You feel free to link me that as well.
Okay.
But the idea, if we're gonna bring Olga Bulga up in this debate,
Ballistic evidence is kind of important. I don't know. Maybe
well, it depends on
I'm
who-
silly.
Oh, the Berkut. Those police
Berkut,
officers. Yeah, they were ordered by Yanukovych to fire on protesters, and they did. We have
The bullets not match up with their assault rifles.
I don't know what bullets match up with their assault rifles mean. If you get an actual bullet and you get an assault rifle, you can look at the striations of the round. I don't know if that type of forensic analysis is done, but you can laugh all you want. But we can watch the videos.
Oh,
dude.
it's just
It's
incredible.
20
You're just
it's 20
no, we
bro,
heard
the
this
year
from
is-
someone,
year is-
but the
year is
evidence doesn't
2014.
matter.
The year is 2014. We've got video footage of fucking everything that happens. They've done a full reconstruction, of everything. You can measure when the bullet leaves. You can hear the sounds across 10 cell phones, and you can see who's getting shot by
There was
who.
video
It's not a
footage of the
mystery.
coast of Kiev.
Hinkle, can you link that?
Yes,
link the
yes,
forensic
yes. You did ask for that. I will.
Sure, and if anybody's bored, here's this in the Zoom chat. If you want to watch it later, you can literally watch the videos of people getting killed. You can see from multiple cell phone angles where the shots are coming from. We've got CCTV footage of the police officers behind their barricades shooting directly into protesters. You can see from 4 different angles the bullet going to the protester and killing him. You can measure the sound waves off of every single fucking cell phone that's recording it. It's not a mystery. And then meanwhere on your end, you've got Olga forensic investigation to prove that it's all fake.
Oh, I
if
see
there's
what.
contradictory
One sec.
evidence.
There is no
I see-
contradictory evidence. Sorry, go ahead.
I see
Wait,
what- I see
Adam,
what Hinkle is- I see
never
what
mind.
Hinkle is doing now. That it is like a paywall article, so we cannot check.
It's not a
immediately.
paywall article.
Yes, it is. For me, there's like a paywall.
I didn't even send it to you. How do you have a paywall if I didn't even send it to
That's
you?
the one that I sent New York Times.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. But yeah, it was Destiny. Sorry.
Okay, no worries.
So Hinkle, please link it because I'm interested. Is it now? I'm gonna go through it quickly as Destiny takes the lead.
Not only is everything that's being said so far just completely without substantiation, even if it was,
We're literally the only ones
even if we-
providing
even if
substantiation.
we
It's
granted
incredible.
every single thing you've said, none of this gets you anywhere near allowing Russia to invade another country to try to break away territory.
That's a
This is
leap. To get to where Russia,
CanadianDimension.com.
to get to the point of Russia invading Ukraine, we're just trying to first establish the legitimacy of Donetsk and Crimea because of the coup in the Maidan. Now, as far as the events leading up to Russia's intervention, that's a different story.
Sure, so let's say that there was a coup. What is the justification for Russia to invade?
Russia decided that it wanted to settle the matter peacefully through the Minsk agreements, which the Ukrainian
Nick, what's
government had agreed to. Now,
It's not peaceful to take territory from another country. You understand that, right?
Right. It's also not peaceful to have a violent coup. So that's where
No, hold on. Two wrongs don't make a right. If
Well,
we thought
I'll
that the
explain it
Belarusian elections weren't,
Yeah,
that means we can
I'll
go and
explain it
invade
this way.
Belarus.
Sure, it is definitely not justified.
Oh, sure, we can. Okay.
It's definitely not just justified for a country to come in and just take territory, regardless of the will of the people living there. But when you do have an overthrow of the constitutional order, and the people of a certain region overwhelmingly decide that they want to join another sovereign state, that they're historically, ethnically, and
Matters, but okay.
that is definitely not the same as a country just coming in and taking it. If people in their sovereign capacity decide that they want to join another state that they feel will represent them better than the one that had just overthrew their democratically elected representative, that's not the same thing as a country just coming in.
So if enough people in Texas voted to secede and they wanted to join Mexico, would Mexico be right to send an army into the United States to secure that territory?
If there was a coup in the United States that overthrew the constitutional order, and there was all this, everything was thrown up in the air, and
part of the
people
debate.
of Texas, for some reason, were no longer able to have any sovereign representation in the capital, then of course it would be justified.
Do you understand what you're doing for? Do you understand what you're doing?
Justified in this country.
Do you understand what you're doing? You say that if any country has a coup, another country has a right to come in and peel off territory from that country. You don't think that
That
might
is
set
not
bad
what I'm
precedent?
saying at all. I am
That's
not
exactly
saying
what you're saying.
No,
you're
I'm
saying
not
that you're saying that there was a coup being represented as a result of that coup, so they want to break away and join another country. And you're saying that if that
that's
is
not
the case,
same as another country just coming in and peeling it away, because one implies that they're just doing it at the expense of the people living there.
not
The other
necessarily.
one's-
You can peel away. We could probably find some people in Mexico or Canada that want to join the U.S. and send a military there to go and support them. Like,
when
You're
you say
also
that
acting as though that coup government wasn't responsible for violence against its own civilians who wanted to break away as a result of the coup government
by
being
breaking
installed.
away, you've already committed a violent act. So of course, I would expect a country to violently
don't make a right.
No,
before-
self-defense is not a wrong. If somebody's trying to break away from your country, you have a right to defend your sovereignty. Of
Well,
course.
if someone overthrows your democratically elected representative, which
they
represents-
had democratic elections afterwards, did they not?
No.
that those were not considered legitimate by the people living there because they are.
Who didn't consider them legitimate? Even Putin considered these elections
But
legitimate.
Putin is not the people of Eastern Ukraine. The people of
Eastern Ukraine don't get to unilaterally just say we don't like the elections, therefore they're not legitimate.
No,
it doesn't
but
make
they
any
do
sense.
they do get to say that if you overthrow our elected representative, we don't think you're doing because we already voted for a guy before and you just got rid of him.
Okay, so so if they didn't like the new leader, they have a right now to basically break
No,
away.
that's not.
It's
what I
not
said.
whether
I
or not
said-
they liked him or didn't like him. There was an illegal ouster of this president that was pressed by violence from thugs of criminals that were propped up by the United States and people like current Undersecretary of State Victoria Nuland.
True czarist over here.
Okay.
I think Adam, you just confined yourself to making like these snide, insubstantial comments.
No, because my frustration with you is that you of course are way more into this like hard like leftist revolutionary aesthetic,
Yeah.
and then here like the either Lipkuk or Nazi or whatever, and then it's you who are questioning who are saying that a revolution or regime change is not valid because you didn't get the votes. You were 10 votes short.
No, if you want to have a philosophical argument about
the glorious revolution failed because we were 10 votes short. Also, something interesting. Wait, just one more point.
Yeah.
Something that was also mentioned that when I think Hinkle mentioned that like the mob stormed the palace of Yanukovych, right? Which is like it wasn't a storming. People just kind of showed up to his villa, which is where did that come from, right? The money for it. And people
That's
just
legal.
strolled in, and to this day, it is the Museum of Corruption in Ukraine. You can go up. It's in Mezhigiria. It's in the northern Kiev suburb.
was this
And this is the
friendly
same
occupation legal?
This is this is the same energy as Soviet communist troops, red troops showing up to the Tsar's palaces in Russia and looking around saying, "Wow, look
No,
at
that's
this nice
the
stuff.
reason
Now we
that's
own
not
it.
comparable.
Now it's the people."
Yeah, the reason that's not comparable is because the October Revolution was already precipitated by the February Revolution, overthrew an autocracy, which was not a modern democratic state in any capacity. It was not some kind of constitutional order. It was a pure autocracy, which was overthrown already by February. It was the Kerensky government, which was in power at the time, which also, lost in the constitutive elections with the unity of the Bolsheviks and the left SRs deciding that they wanted to get out of the war and overthrow. So,
Sure,
the comparison's completely void. You can't say
My
oh,
point Sure, my point was that you so vehemently opposed the spirit of this whole thing, right? Because Yanukovych wasn't an absolute monarch, but he was actually leading towards it, ordering his police to fire at protesters.
Wait, but you're saying
He what? Hey, whoa!
Wait, Adam.
He criminalized protesting, for example, and he also made it legal to try people in absentia. So even if you weren't in the courthouse, you cannot defend yourself, don't have a lawyer. The court can just sentence you to 20 years of prison for just allegedly protesting.
And the United States right now is illegally extraditing Julian Assange to lock him up in the CIA black site for 175 years.
Hold on, real quick. You think the United
listen, Adam,
States
something.
anywhere comparable to the laws that
I don't know why,
Yanukovych passed
Adam.
when he fled the country?
Adam. I don't know why you keep bringing up this conspiracy theory that they were raining down on the protesters that were controlled by Viktor Yanukovych when I just sent you proof, testimonies from the people on the ground there who were saying that they saw snipers shooting from Hotel Ukraina window, saw a sniper near the roof of the Hotel Ukraina sign, and another sniper on the roof of this hotel on Zhozhnevny Palace side. These were all Ukrainian Euromaidan-controlled buildings.
Yes.
There's no ballistic analysis in this article?
No, we do have the ballistic analysis too.
I went through this article. It's written by Ivan Kachanovsky. This seems to be the conclusions of.
It is Russian propaganda.
Well said,
I will not look at
Misanthropic.
it. The ballistic
Well said.
evidence is not worth my time.
I got coffee for both of us, by the way.
Underwhelming. It's like no sources whatsoever. It's like
No sources.
The guy's strongly insisting basically.
There's an
He links
irony
to his
here.
study.
There's an irony
study
here
and-
because you said something earlier. You said something about how if I'm a rebel, constitutional order is important.
Yeah,
The argument
why
actually
are you
reminds
such
me-
a bootlicker?
And Adam,
Why are you such a
Adam,
bootlicker? That guy just said. Why are you such a
Because your argument
bootlicker?
actually reminds me of a literal argument Mussolini and Hitler made when they were reproached by the suspending the legal constitutional order of their respective countries. Oh, it was just a revolution, just like what you guys did. And this evinces the fact that it seems like these ultra liberals like yourselves and outright fascists and Nazis have the same line of thinking that
I am more pro-revolution
suspend,
than you are. Actually.
you can just suspend the constitutional order of a country at the expense of the actual people living there. Can you do that? But you can actually deny the ability for people who want to, after the suspension of this constitutional order, have their own revolution and say that's somehow illegitimate and illegal. You can't at the same speak on behalf of the legal order while at the same time having overthrown it. So pick your argument. I'm not even saying that, I'm just defending the constitutional order of Ukraine. I'm defending the right of the people in Donetsk and Lugansk and Crimea to exercise their sovereign right to secede from Ukraine.
Sure, but when that happened, when those votes happened in Donetsk and Luhansk, they were already occupied by paramilitary troops supported by Russia. So it was happening under gunpoint, same in Crimea. So those are not the same.
So when you say it happens under gunpoint, are you trying to say that if it weren't for that fact, there wouldn't have been overwhelming pro-Russian sentiment in those regions to leave?
You
saying
know,
they're forced?
problem. It was more. It was
What is
more
gun-
in gunpoint. Yes, in gunpoint means in Crimea, government buildings were taken over by the polite green men. That was Russian Spetsnaz, and based
Were
on
there demonstrations in front of those government buildings by ordinary Crimeans who actually were expressing protest against the coup?
No, because the streets are full of Russian special forces with guns. And
So those were all Russian special forces who were gathering in front of the Crimea. Is that what you're trying to allege?
But the little green man with the advanced Russian weaponry and the green suits and no
What
insignia.
about the mobs
those
of
were,
civilian protesters who were protesting the ousting of Yanukovych in Crimea? Were those little green men?
who?
the protesters that were very frustrated at the idea that there was this illegal ouster of their president that they voted
yeah,
for.
sure.
And then,
they are
hey, wait, I'm not done yet. And then in addition to that, when, as you put it, they had democratic elections, they were able to vote in the Donbass. They didn't want people in Donetsk and Lugansk to be able to vote in the so-called democratic election. So I don't really know why
I'm the
People in
coolest
Donbass
guy
were
on
kept from
screen
voting
now.
for new leadership. There were no.
certain portions, yes.
Actually,
wait,
oligarchical governors were appointed by the Ukrainian government to, in this feudal way, rule over the people.
Nobody else could do this.
All of the
Hair down.
And then
Like
wait, I
May
wasn't done
does
yet.
into a bomb
This
rip.
actually more of a Russian thing to have regions be ruled by strong men. This is actually
But the
something that
Donetsk
Ukraine,
and Lugansk People's Republics overthrew people like Kolomoisky and other oligarchical families that had directly
sure.
controlled the government.
Kolomoisky was in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. The east was firmly Yanukovych area. So he was
overthrown by the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic. They overthrew and unseated these oligarchical families.
Yanukovych, there in the east, Yanukovych was the bigwig in town, right? It was his base.
Yeah, but he was appointed after the Maidan was cleared. He was only dismissed in 2016 by Poroshenko. Mm-hmm. So that was years after
Viktor
the Maidan.
Yanukovych, was Viktor Yanukovych still the active, what do we say, governor of Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast?
God, you stutter so much.
No,
it's
he was
incredible.
not. Yanukovych was not.
Hey, do you guys deny that the Ukrainians were planning a full-scale invasion into
Why
the
do we
Donbass?
one conspiracy to the next? We
do you
can't solve any point. Like,
well, we put up all this evidence and we give you guys all these sources, and then you say, well, I don't believe these sources because they are Russian propagandists.
Evidence.
So
wait,
let's move on to the next thing that you're probably going to deny, even though we'll give you evidence. Do you not believe? No, hey, I let you talk for so long, Destiny. I let you talk for so long. I let you talk for so long.
Before we go into the Q&A, so I do want to make sure that people are able to hear what you guys are saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so at this point, like, Hinkle is kind of out of arguments and he's trying.
Yeah, I'm good to go like right to the Q&A.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think we can do.
No. I would like to address one last thing. Do you deny that the Ukrainian top brass military personnel were planning a full-scale invasion into the Donbass in March of 2022?
I don't know how you can invade your own sovereign territory.
March of 2022, as the invasion began.
No, prior to the Russian invasion being launched, there was documents that were being prepared by top military brass that they were going to launch an invasion into the Donbass, a full-scale invasion.
So let me get this straight. Ukraine, so Russia masses all these 150,000 troops on the border.
Right on the other side of the 100,000 plus that Ukraine had amassed.
Yes.
In their own country?
And Russians were in their own country as well. Good job. I'm glad we clarified that.
Russia's trying to control their own borders. Russia's trying to invade another country. Why would you try to equate these two things?
Did you guys call them the Socias?
To be their borders.
It is, because even Russia and every other sovereign state on the planet recognized it as their borders, of course.
Within the Budapest Memorandum in 1994. The Budapest Memorandum in 1994, which Russia agreed. 1991. Anyway, Russia agreed to Ukraine's borders, and I guess that was, that was like worth.
That was under the presumption that the Russian speakers in eastern Ukraine were going to be democratically represented.
No. Where that wasn't written into the recognition of anything.
That
you can't make it conditional afterwards.
That is written in the foundation of, since 1991, the modern Ukrainian state itself.
Show me where it's written that we can invade your country if we feel like you're not representing a certain group.
What's written.
Exactly. So don't even try to pretend, okay?
Ukrainian state's founding was going to be given democratic representation, including the people in the east who spoke Russian and also the people who were ethnically Russian. I mean, this deal was necessary for a stable transition into the post-Soviet era.
No, it wasn't necessary for any stable transition. Do you think the USSR had a call on whether or not the republic broke off from the USSR? The USSR fell apart. They had no control over it.
But on a multi
up words now.
Countries like Russia, Belarus, and others, and also the Western partners who we're dealing with, all did have to negotiate the terms under which this was going to be happening. It would have been unthinkable at the time for the stability of the region. I mean, it was already unstable. You had places like Abkhazia and Ossetia and Transnistria with these disputations. I mean, so it was unstable.
These aren't disputed. These are broken off by Russia.
Yeah.
No, they were not.
Okay, to get back to the point, the last point that we were here trying to make. The last point we were here trying to make was that the brigade that they were planning to launch this formal invasion into the Donbass with was trained by U.S. and British instructors in Lviv in accordance with NATO training programs. So it was literally they had begun supplying increased amounts of military artillery to Ukraine. Then they were planning this full-scale invasion with NATO-trained Ukrainian brigades, and they were going to slaughter even more civilians in the Donbass, which is just another reason for Russia launching this protective mission, whatever you call it, to stop this from happening, the continued slaughtering that has taken place for the past 8 years against the people of the Donbass.
And a blood and soil genocide is more like it. But I'm going to quote Sergei.
You're literally a Nazi supporter. You literally are a Nazi supporter. Your arguments are null and void. You post memes about Stefan Bandera. You defend the Azov Nazi battalion. Kind of incredible that you show your face. If I were you, I wouldn't show my face online because you're defending Nazis.
I'm going to close with a quote from Sergei Lavrov. Within our borders, what we want, we move our military, we do military maneuvers the way we choose, and no other country has any say in the matter. Sergei Lavrov. I think it applies to Ukraine as well.
Republics are disputed territory, and Ukraine signed the Minsk
Disputed
Agreement.
Disputed by whom?
By the people living there and the Ukrainian government. That's why there was a conflict. That's why there was the Minsk agreements, which the Ukrainian government voluntarily signed, and then later claimed they had signed at gunpoint, even though France and Germany were also parties to that agreement.
Anyway, legally to this day, no one really officially contests the Donetsk agreements. Maybe Russia made fact, but as far as international agreements are concerned, Russia still considers that area to be Ukraine.
Yeah, but if international...
We can go to the Q&A if you want to, by the way, I'm done.
International agreements are not the sole factor in defining what constitutes.
Wait, I thought
there's sovereignty at the internal level and then sovereignty at the external level. Now, internally,
it seems like
external sovereignty is determined by how mad your neighbors are, I guess. Too.
Yeah.
No, internal sovereignty. Read the basic
James.
Your liberalism, your liberal thinkers talk about the social contract and the need for an agreement to be come to between the government and the people. Unless what? I mean, Thomas Jefferson, even he said that it is right and justified for a people to overthrow their government if they're not in a constitutional way.
A people to overthrow their government, not for a foreign power to come in and take over your shit when there's conflict.
Well, Putin recognized the new government of Ukraine. It's the people.
For 30-some-odd years, we've been doing that, right? But it's his property. Yes, of course he knows it. He can see that it's, and his yard looks like a shit house.
And its fence is falling over.
His fence is disgusting.
Literally, it looks like a junkyard. His pool is full of green slime, and he feeds the frickin' bears.
Nationalists did not get their anti-Semitism from the Nazis. They were doing pogroms during the Russian Civil War.
Yeah, but the nature of the anti-Semitism, as voiced by people like Bandera during the 30s, was qualitatively different than whatever historical European pogroms were happening before. So that's like saying there was pogroms in the medieval times in Ukraine. It doesn't speak to the unity of the anti-Semitic violence during the Holocaust.
But Hitler's anti-Semitism and Nazi anti-Semitism was this weird, almost ultimate culmination of essentially hundreds of years of Christian propaganda and traditional European.
Yeah, well, you could also say it was actually.
I'll give you the last word, Infrared, and then we got it because the question was originally for you, and then we got to go to the next one because you're crunched on time. Infra, if you wanted to say something, like I said.
I was just going to say it was unique because it represented this post-Christian, pan-European, pagan idea that the Jewish people are foreigners to Europe and that they have to, and then just like other so-called subhuman races.
Wasn't anti-Semitism across Europe, all over Europe past World War I? It wasn't unique one or two countries, right? But
yeah, but
anyway, next question anyway. Sorry.
Oh, this one from Mitchell says, question for both sides. If you had the power and money to end this war, how would you do it?
Supply more heavy weapons to Ukraine until they crush the Russian army to the dust, so we can restore the borders that Russia originally agreed to, and then we can later on we can do fun stuff like break up the Russian Empire into its constituent states, so we will not have an imperialist power wage active war in Europe in 2022 again, in the 21st century.
Jackson, you want to go? You can go.
Yeah, very, very simple. I mean, what Azov something just said is an effort to prolong the war. What I would do. And hopefully Ukraine would have some sense of, logic and agree to it and understand that if they don't, it's going to end up much worse for them. That you have to cede the regions that Russia has already established control over, including Donetsk, Lugansk, and Crimea, because Russia has the ability to continue advancing. Also get Mykolaiv, Zaporizhia, and Odessa. Very historically significant town to them. Ukraine must remain neutral, meaning no NATO, stationing of artillery or personnel or trenchery anymore. And all official outed Nazi battalions and regiments and political leaders must appear before an international tribunal to try them for war crimes, if any, crimes of aggression that would be set before an international charter.
Also, in addition to all that, because I agree with all of that, since we're talking about power and money, I would also invest in the infrastructure and economic development of both Eastern and Western Ukraine, such that the source of Nazi extremism and anti-Russian sentiment, because they're blaming Russia for their own oligarchy economy, I would have mutual economic development, which would lead to long-lasting peace in the region.
I would say that the agreement should be really simple. All of the territory should be returned to Ukraine. This includes the Donbas, it includes Crimea. Russia should probably even leave Sevastopol. I think they've lost any legitimate claim they've had to even running the base there. I think that Russia has shown that they are incapable of sustaining any long-term ground war. Their military discipline, for a variety of reasons, is just abysmal. And the further and longer that the war goes on, the more Russia's economy is going to suffer, and the more, what little military honor they had will shrink and disappear into nothing.
Well, the ruble is the best.
Russia's economy is really being hit, huh?
Kind of.
Keep in mind that all of these guys that are laughing right now called that the war would be over in like a week, and
Well,
now
that's
they're on
the-
like the
yeah,
most
yeah.
massive.
Hold on.
Haas, you are literally honored. I can bring the clip up of you saying admitting.
You're
that
literally
if
today
they
right
didn't
now that's
control-
saying
hold
that
on,
Russia's
wait,
economy is
what
weak.
if-
You're
hold
literally
on,
saying that
okay,
Russia's
hold on.
economy is being hurt. How's the ruble
Literally.
doing? How's their international trade doing?
We gotta move forward.
I like how
just
Jackson
to be clear
defended,
about that, what I said was that, in
infrared.
my view, that things would not have gone as planned. Well, I was
yeah.
wrong about that.
Oh,
I
they
was
didn't.
wrong. But
Let's go
will
to
you
the next-
admit that you were wrong about the depreciation?
This one, guys, I hate to
Were
do
you,
this.
were you
Ran
wrong about
interference
the
for him.
ruble being totally worthless, even
was
though
cool, Jackson.
not only has
You're a
Their
good
currency's
friend,
having
bro.
extreme trouble right now, but
He's
okay.
a good
the ruble
wingman.
has reached historical
Bloomberg
highs.
just announced that the ruble's the top performing currency in the world.
There you go.
That's some crazy how that works. Huh? Not only
You are
is the ruble
such
the
a
top
dumbass.
performing
It's
cur-
really
not
You are
only is it the
such a
top performing
dumbass.
currency
Really
in the world,
incredible.
Russia's military is one of the
It's
strongest standing
incredible.
armies in the world as well.
Oh,
The
hell
military
yeah,
discipline
You
is
just
strict.
deny all reality.
Super on point. Everything is
gotta
going
go.
exactly.
It's incredible.
This
Destiny,
one-
you're
coming
so
up-
triggered.
Incredible.
Next
You're so
question.
triggered.
You gotta go. Pedro
so
H. thanks
triggered.
very much says, why pro-Russian Ukrainians don't move to Russia? Why not offer asylum? It seems a simpler solution than annexing a whole country. It's $5 USD, by the way.
Because
Oh, that's an
they-
easy one. Oh, who's
Yeah,
that
yeah.
for?
Because it's there where they're living, where they're settled. During the Soviet Union, that was the bread and butter of their way of life.
Yeah,
How did they get there, by the
man?
way?
Why would you want to leave your home?
It depends on who.
It's where you
Some
live.
were there.
How
Gonna
did
leave?
Russians get to Ukraine, by the way?
They're Russians
is
and they
like
live in Ukraine.
centuries.
They don't want to
Funny,
leave.
funny historical
Centuries?
reason.
So
No,
the
that's
real
centuries.
answer is
That-
Russia doesn't want those ethnic Ukrainians or the ethnic Russians from Ukraine to go back. They don't give a fuck about those people. Those people are only in Ukraine so that they can have a claim to the territory. Why would Russia want all the ethnic Russians back?
They've
Then
been
they
there
have
for
less of a
centuries.
reason to do a civil war over there.
Destiny,
Of
I
course
know
they
you're
want to go
triggered.
over there.
Destiny, I know you're triggered, but no one can hear you or understand you when you talk that fast. But
But
what I will say is
they've been there for centuries. What are you talking about?
the reason why they should not have to flee to Russia is because they're home, and they shouldn't have to leave it because a U.S. installed apparatus has decided that they want to harass, murder, and torture the civilians there because they don't like their leadership or their controlled leadership.
Okay. Next question, I think.
I'm the
We're done.
only channel on the internet that's covering this debate while showing you live deer.
Needless to say, a
Simultaneously.
lot of innocent
It's
lives
the first
are
on the internet,
being
right here,
lost,
folks.
though.
You're seeing it here
Putin
now.
needs to stop.
Bro.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, the most horrible thing is that like Russia went in saying that like, oh, we'll protect the Russian-speaking Ukrainians from the, like the little Russians from the evil Ukrainian Nazis, and the most of the and essentially
All
the
10 of
overwhelming
you.
casualties of the war are Russian-speaking Ukrainians.
Be-
It's a fucking scorched earth, as we've seen like cruise missiles hit residential neighborhoods, artillery barrages, the TOS-1 thermobaric missiles hit housing areas. Massive civilian casualties in Mariupol. Currently, they're trying to cover up the civilian death toll. We see mass graves upon mass graves.
It just so happens that
of course,
you-
Russians are saying that the Azov did it, but like I mean, it's like someone takes a shit on the street, Russia will say it was Azov. So
It just so
sad.
happens that YouTube censorship enforces all of these allegations you're saying. We're not even allowed to contest any of them.
Fucking
Yeah,
Susan
because
is
it's-
at it again. God damn it.
Yeah. George Soros talked to you up.
Would you deny that? Because
Coming in
it's
from-
literally- your
How
view
you
can't
do
even
this.
be debated because it's enforced by YouTube
It's-
censorship.
And yet here
Yeah.
we are debating it right now.
Yeah.
No, we're not debating it.
individual claims he just made about Russia.
We literally can't talk about that, or else they'll demonetize us.
Yeah.
Demonetized.
Permanently.
Wow. Wow.
They remove your super chat ability.
They also can issue a community
That is not
right,
censorship.
which actually happened.
That's not censorship. Saying if you talk about something, they're going to remove your ability to monetize your content.
They also
Yes,
issued
that is not
strikes.
censorship. Sorry.
They've also issued suspensions over it as well.
If
so
you
I
want
don't know.
censorship, look at what Russia is doing with its journalists.
If
That's
you want
what about
censorship,
it?
if you want
Russia doesn't
censorship,
claim
no,
to be-
last thing. If you want censorship, look at what Zelensky has done in banning all opposition parties and locking up, imprisoning, torturing, and killing
Yeah, and look at
dissidents
banning all
and journalists who
wait,
oppose
what?
Zelensky.
No,
Look at what
banning
Zelensky-
Look at what the SBU death squads
Look
did.
at the long list
Although,
of names.
considering
of
that
people-
you're a big fan of
CIA
Bandera,
black
I
sites
can't
and
imagine that you have a problem in the world with the SBU death squads.
And yeah,
The
what about
what?
people like Jan Taxier?
Is it like the
who's a
FEMA death
journalist
camps
who,
or
was
something?
detained?
Like, is this some kind of like far-right conspiracy theory that you guys are like pushing?
You're the only conspiracy theorist here.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
Anyway,
Also,
yeah,
Adam, just
got
to be
it.
This one coming in. We have this one. Fernandez T says, here to support you, James. Thanks for your kind support, friend. Says, and by the way, 100% of super chats are going to go to charity today. That one is linked in the description box. They said, let's see. Thanks for your support, though. And Captain V says, for SB3 says, what's worse, a league of grind or this debate? This one coming in from Chris Morlock says, for Lestiny and Soydom. Ukraine, sorry is what it says. They say Ukraine reformed, I love you guys. Ukraine reformed its National Guard in 2014. It had not existed since 2000. 7 battalions were instantiated from ultra-right groups. Source, Wall Street Journal, 2014.
I mean, if what percentage of those people were Nazis, what percentage of them were like nationalist radicals, we don't know. This is just like, source, please.
Yeah,
But
it's almost like
it's a good boogeyman.
how many
though, for,
people
like,
in
for
the
Russian guys.
AfD are Nazis?
Quite a lot of them. The AfD has
Can
two
you
wings
measure that?
actually. Yes, absolutely. In West Germany, there is this based on like polling data within Germany. In West Germany, the AfD is generally trying to be like a more traditional right-wing populist party. In the East, it's full on blood and soil, and you can actually keep it up.
Okay, well, I don't see the data confirming.
Look it up. I mean, Wikipedia.
Okay, well,
Unless it's
there
too
you go.
suspicious for you.
I think this is a debate between people who know what they're talking about and Wikipedia.
What is?
You realize that
Yeah.
Jackson literally linked me a Wikipedia article earlier to talk about the.
Yes, I use your own source to prove you wrong.
Thanks.
Something
Okay,
that you
Donald
still
Trump.
haven't apologized for, but whenever you want to, I'm open to it. I might
All right,
consider
Donald
it.
Trump.
Consider your apology.
All right,
What is
Donald.
Lestiny mean anyway? The analytical failure says if there were 10 votes short, that's how coups work.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay.
Also said evidence of
I
sniper.
don't know. I want people to know. Don't you understand that there's been elections in the U.S. where the margins were really small? Those margins matter.
True.
A Chris Morlock 2014 referendum held in Crimea, Donetsk, Lugansk. 92% voted to join Russia. You claim the entire population of these areas, 7 million people, over 85% turnout, was at Russian gunpoint.
Sure. Do you think there was like an incentive to go out and vote? Oh, actually, you know what? The better question.
So when the Ukrainian
if-
military is there-
Hold on, let's
the
give it a
question.
chance.
The question was for me. In those areas, the Ukrainian military was not there. The Ukrainian military did not exist almost at the time. It had like 2,000-3,000 deployable troops, and that's it. So. A better question though, what would have happened if the people accidentally voted that they want to remain part of Ukraine? Like, do you think Russians would have just like packed up and it's like, okay, well, I guess we're the people, and we have just left Crimea and left the Donbass, the Donbass? Of course not. Obviously, the people, pro-Ukrainian people at that point, so these referendums happened later after the Russian takeover. So, I mean, pro-Ukrainian people kind of saw the writing on the wall. There's Russian troops, abducting people, etc., and essentially threatening people. So like a massive chilling effect as well. So those people who are pro-Russian will stay. Those people who are pro-Ukrainian will most likely leave, as it happened in Crimea, for example. But actually, the Russian, some Russian organ, like I have this long video about Ukraine. Check it out. In that, I covered that this Russian state organization accidentally leaked the real Kremlin, like the real Crimea referendum results. And it was really close to 50-50, with much of the pro-Ukrainian population having
I'm
already
sure that
fled.
was real.
Oh, sure.
Adam,
Look it
Adam,
up.
I have a
Those
question for you.
screenshots.
I have a question for Adam.
Oh, it's the Q&A section. Feel free.
I know. I have a question. Adam,
I'm sure it's gonna be good faith.
Yeah, no, it's very good faith. Adam, your videos prior to starting the Ukraine coverage, I thought they were pretty interesting. They're about infrastructure. They're about like transport. You seemed very obsessed with making sure that the trains were arriving on time,
Oh, right.
and all the different areas you were covering
That's a
and
Nazi.
talking about.
Like a
Very,
Nazi.
very obsessed actually with trains arriving on time. So I'm curious, what led you from talking about trains arriving on time to go to defending Nazis like Stefan Bandera?
It's funny.
Yeah, Holocaust, trains, Nazis, Auschwitz. Sure, I don't defend Nazis. In fact,
You defended Azov and Stefan Bandera.
I didn't defend Azov. I said I support the idea of throwing Azov at the Russians. That way you can stem the tide of imperialist aggression from Russia, and a bunch of Nazis die in the process. This is consequentialism.
Also,
I think
you
this
claim
is
that
the
the
most
presence of a
optimal solution for all.
military means it's at gunpoint. Have
The
you ever
presence of a foreign military.
Okay, hold on. Okay. Have you ever considered that if, let's just assume you're right and the foreign military was there, you ever consider that the foreign military was only because it was like overwhelmingly already known that the region had pro-Russian sentiment? Now, it wasn't formally
What? It doesn't
measured.
matter. I don't know why you
That's not
keep
how this
using this
works.
childish argument. Whether or not you have pro whatever sentiment or anti whatever sentiment, you have the right for military to go into another country
But, like, okay,
and hold
you're
new
saying a
elections
foreign military
while they're
would be
occupying a country.
This is the same deer that's come by and hung out with her man. She's got a
Militaries aren't
cataract
decided
or
by their
a
language.
growth right on her eye.
Many of them are even citizens.
On her right eye. It's the same
Militaries
two
aren't
deer.
decided by where else
Destiny.
other people have citizenship. What?
Destiny, like
Yeah,
Haas
I
is
know,
now-
but
I've
Haas-
noticed
Haas
that
is
thing
now-
on her eye. When I was sitting out there and they were coming up to me, that was them. And it was actually the male. Was it the male that was walking up towards me?
You added military.
I think it was the male that was very close to me.
Part of a country away from another country, and then held new
Yeah.
elections.
For that to happen, but in context, it's clearly not the case.
Sure, let me
Haas,
ask you this.
did
One good faith question that Adam kind of posed earlier, okay? If
Yeah.
they would have voted to stay with Ukraine, do you think Russia would have packed their shit up and left?
I genuinely do. I think they would have been.
You're
they would have been
absolutely
shocked.
delusional.
They-
I don't
they-
need to hear it.
They would have been
You're
absolutely
delusional.
fine with
I
it.
think they would have been so shocked that they had miscalculated
So
what
shocked.
the sentiment in that.
Yeah, miscalculated like they have their
talking
entire
about
war
it-
effort.
Destiny. No, one last thing, because I didn't get to put my 2 cents in this round. One last thing.
I don't
It's
even think you have
incredible,
2 cents to put together.
Destiny. It's incredible that you're putting this argument forward when literally Viktor Yanukovych was the one who said he didn't want to work with the EU, and as a result of that, the U.S. actually cooed him out of political leadership in Ukraine.
Say that as much
So
as you
you're
want,
trying to
there's no
act
evidence
like,
for it.
oh, Russia's
There's
the one
no
doing
evidence
this.
for a coup. You can say it
No.
as much as you want, but there's no
You
evidence.
can you
that
can
has
make
any
the argument maybe Russia would have done it, but the U.S. actually
just
did it
repeat
in
fake
Ukraine.
shit over
The
and over
U.S.
again.
actually did it.
Bro.
Become true.
T1000.
So Crimea was brainwashed, but the
Adams
Maidan
made
people
so
were not
many
brainwashed
poor-
by
The
it.
Maidan people were Ukrainians that were
Poor
protesting
he's
for
just-
what?
They weren't brainwashed
lied
by
about
Western
shit.
media, but the people in Eastern Ukraine.
And he
were
doesn't
brainwashed.
recognize the
brainwashed
facts
by
when he
Western
gets
media. They
proven
saw Western
wrong.
people living
And he
happy,
doesn't recognize when
democratic,
other people are
economically
right about
prosperous
shit.
lives, and they thought, "Wow, I want that."
Yeah, their lives have gotten
That was
so
the
much better.
brainwashing
Their
that happened.
their
They
lives
were
have gotten
also
so
caught.
much better under the Western
She's
sphere of
laying
influence.
down.
It's incredible how
Aw.
the state of Ukraine has just prospered.
Oh no! When the
True.
Russian oligarchs were running fucking everything in Ukraine, they were doing way better then. True, absolutely
the thing
true.
is
Absolutely,
that-
it's not like Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries in the fucking world. Leading
And you know what? You know what, Destiny?
Western
If they
model of liberal democracy that gives rise to oligarchy historically in that.
There we go. Now we're getting to the real Russian argument. These would actually be interesting debate if you guys weren't so fucking like slimy. If you want to have the real conversation of like the collapse of like Western liberalism and Russia seeing itself as like kind of instilling itself as
Well, no.
kind of a new world like
The-
multipolar
the
thing in the East.
Soviet-
That's the conversation.
John,
The
Soviet
real
assets
reason
were
why Russia's
privatized.
invading Ukraine. You guys aren't honest enough to have that conversation.
Were privatized and the free market decided.
I'd be happy to have that conversation.
Concentrate-
No, you won't admit that that's the actual rationale of everything happening.
Hold on,
If
you realize
that's an
what
interesting
it is?
conversation,
Hold on,
but
you
you're not a
realize
good
the
faith actor to
entire-
have.
Happy to have that
The entire
conversation.
reason
Three of you.
The entire reason for Putin's illiberal
No, we
authoritarianism
have to.
is because
we have to
under
move
liberal
forward.
democracy, oligarchs reign free.
Pause.
That's why Putin has to be
You have to move
authoritarian
forward.
to rein them in.
Must move forward. Gnarly Bonesful says, "Can Jackson Hinkle update us on the NATO commanders in Avastal?"
No, I can't because the Russians have not publicized any of their names, but they have announced that there's going to be war criminal tribunals that involve NATO instructors in Mariupol that take place.
Wow. Imagine Russia.
Destiny and Adam, how does it feel? Let's see. How does it feel to be losing the conflict? And I don't know if they mean that, if they're trying to suggest that.
I think they mean the
They
invasion.
can't be talking about Ukraine losing the conflict because
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what's
They say, and looking at Novorossiya.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what they do in the conflict. No, I mean the Russian offensive in Severodonetsk.
I don't care what that guy said. Mom,
Yes, honey.
that male and female that came really close to me that day. Okay, they're both here. She's got like a growth on her eye, on her right eye. That's how I know it's the same pair. She's laying down right here by the.
No, but these are deer that have been here before, and he recognized them because she has a growth on one of her eyes.
Mom, she's laying down right here. She's laying down right by the window. And he's right there too.
They're just here in the yard. They just come every night.
Ukraine is currently losing 100 troops a day. That is a staggering amount.
So yes, Cold War, but like Russia lost Kiev, they lost Kiev.
Russia did not lose Kharkiv. What was the first one you said? What was the first one you said?
First they lost Kiev, and then they
What battle ensued in Kiev?
Young.
Show me the
No, they're
evidence.
adults.
They're
They're
adults,
at least
but
2
they're
years.
young.
What
They're at
battle
least 2
ensued
years
in
old.
Kiev?
Look, Ben.
Russia
The hawk
literally
just
has
flew
like
into the
retreated from
tree.
even
Oh,
attempting
right
to
in
Kiev.
front of
What are you
us?
talking
Wait,
about?
no.
See it?
My
Right
question is
here.
what battle
There was-
ensued in Kiev?
There
There was no battle.
Mom, we
in Kiev.
had a
Okay, good.
big red-eared slider
I'm glad
turtle
we
this
figured
big
that
in
out.
the
I'm
creek
glad we
today.
figured out that there was
They
no
just had to
battle in
roll a
Big
Kiev.
couple tanks
turtle.
Great.
straight out.
Thank you for pointing out the
Where's the
obvious,
hawk?
Adam. Something there was no battle in
Where's
Kiev.
the
No, that's
hawk?
great.
Honest question
The
though,
hawk
wait,
Ben.
Jackson, honest question, like who do you think
Right here.
you're convincing
here?
with this? Like,
Stand
there's
up.
no
You
I
just
see it, I
said
see
there
it.
was
Oh
no
my
battle
God.
in
We have
Kiev.
a
You just
hawk
admitted
just
it.
flew
Right
into
here.
Yeah, because
The hawk is right here.
Just flew into the tree. So it's
So if there were,
deer.
hey
It's
Adam,
a
if there was
female
no
and a
battle
male.
in Kiev, in Russia, they surrounded Mariupol with a 4-to-1 troop ratio. Kiev, at best, they had a 1 to 1.5 ratio of troops, meaning they had no intentions to actually invade the city. Do you think that potentially they were staging troops in Busha, set Ukrainian troops in Kiev, and make sure that they had to stay hunkered down there so they couldn't fight in the Donbass?
He's hunting. He's hunting.
That's called a feint strategy. Have you never heard of it?
It's consistent with the originally announced goals.
And in fact, Adam, last thing here, because this is important to what you said. You are literally arguing that in Severodonetsk right now, that operating a feint strategy, but you act like the Russians couldn't have potentially argued or carried out a feint strategy in Kiev, which is what they did.
It's the best feint ever, dude. Like lose.
It is.
Everywhere on the ground and then
Got him, dude. Got him.
They didn't fight in Kiev. You just admitted they didn't fight in Kiev.
With fucking rocket launchers on their shoulders.
So if they didn't fight in Kiev,
literally any of their troops
That's,
anywhere,
nice-
like
Yeah, Ukraine beats it. So that, I think this
Reddit combat footage. It's like you can literally watch the video.
If they
In
didn't-
what
if they
world
did-
are you
hey,
losing
Adam.
tanks to one dude stepping out of a fucking garage with a fucking rocket launcher? Are you
Adam, if they
serious?
didn't fight in Kiev and they were feinting to keep troops stationed in Kiev, and that's what they've continued to do through a troop presence in Belarus, what do you think that they would otherwise be doing there?
So yes, because there are troops that are territorials mostly who would have stayed there anyway, and Russia knew this. So this was the whole thing. The mobile part of the Ukraine, which can be sort of can be sent east. Like those were already sent east. The people who were yours. So even if it was a feint, most of the troops would have stayed there anyway. So it was pointless, and it's even more ridiculous. But of course,
Which is why the Russians left, and they still maintain the presence around Belarus. They left after a month of being there because they realized they didn't have to be there.
It's also consistent with Russia's
I want to jump into the next one. This one coming in from
never stated
Djalma. Let's see. Love watching people like Destiny defending. You see, next time he claims someone is quote dog whistling about a Nazi conspiracy theory, just remind him he supported genocidal Nazis against Slavic people.
Are you talking about NATO shit in Yugoslavia? I don't even know what that's a reference to, but okay.
This one coming in from Virgin CIA Rad Lib. Question for Destiny. It's just, folks, we're looking for meaningful questions here. Sorry, Steven. Okay, this one coming in from, you've got thick skin. You've been on the internet longer than I have. Okay, Bubblegum Gun says 80% of Ukraine government positions are held by Israel.
Okay, it's real.
it's a full-on Nazi country, guys.
This one coming in from Pole says, I was agreeing with Jackson at the start, but then he made fun of the other. See, he was being rude. Question for Adam. What are his thoughts about Turkey blocking Finland and Sweden?
As for being rude to Adam, I don't have a lot of sympathy for Nazi defenders. As for Turkey and NATO, I think Turkey.
Adam on what he thinks.
Oh, go for it.
So Turkey is now, like, Erdogan is a huge piece of shit, obviously, but like Turkey is now trying to eke out some sort of concession from NATO countries. They will not keep up the bloc forever, I think. But what they want to, basically, Erdogan is trying to tie up some loose Kurdish ends with this, because Sweden and Finland have been like friendly to Kurds, and plus they're trying to end the blockade of like end the embargo on like Turkish arms purchases. It's like a realpolitik thing. I think it'll go away.
It's
eventually.
interesting how the constituent members of the Liberal Democratic Alliance, whether in the EU or NATO, increasingly assert their own sovereignty with these authoritarian strongmen. It's almost like liberal democracies fail. Poland, Hungary, Turkey. I mean, what's next?
Yeah, I mean, Russia is definitely not controlled by an authoritarian strongman of all, for sure. What a great
But
alternative
Russia's not
there.
a liberal. No, Russia's not a liberal democracy.
Yeah, it's a far right ethno state. Yeah.
It's not an ethno state. It's the opposite of an ethno state.
You're literally making ethnic arguments for Russia to invade other countries. Wait,
No,
that's
I'm
not an
not.
ethno
Oh my
state.
God.
What the fuck is?
It's not because-
Literally ethnic arguments.
Come on,
They're ethnic
Ossetians-
Russians, so they should be able to
Ossetians-
invade.
Ossetians are not
Ethno
ethnic
state.
Russians. Ossetians are not ethnic Russians.
Sure,
They're
and,
Russians.
How many times have you
do
and
know
Jackson
why-
said ethnic Russians in this debate to justify aggression in the
We're
East?
just doing it
compilation
to
of that.
illustrate the historical, cultural, and civilizational ties.
No,
Sure, and-
historical culture and civilization. You can talk about history, culture, and civilization. That's not what you're saying, though. You're saying ethnically Russian.
Yeah,
That's
Destiny.
what you're
I'll
saying.
answer that.
In
De-
addition,
no,
in
I'll answer that,
Oh, okay.
Destiny. The only reason why
No, I
the
wasn't asking you, Jackson. I was
Okay,
asking
well, I'm going to answer it
Yeah,
anyways because I feel
No,
like
I
it.
seriously don't care.
The
Who is the
only
question
reason
for?
why, the only
Wait,
reason why
is this
the
even his question? Okay, I don't know why he's answering it.
The only reason why
has
I'm going to answer it one way or another. I will answer it.
Can I get to that? What's the next?
The only
James? What's the next
you
question?
made a statement and I'm going to respond. The only reason why the ethnic Russian
We have a lot of questions.
he made a statement and I want to respond.
Not to
Can
you,
I
I'm
not
talking
do
to
that?
Oz. I'm not talking to you.
Give me
Jackson.
like 30 seconds. Give me 30 seconds. I'll answer. The only reason why the ethnic Russian argument is important is because Ukraine is led by a group of anti-ethnic Russian sycophants that want to kill them all, rid them from Ukraine. It's not important to Russia. It's important to the Ukrainian fascists that want to get them out of their country, admittedly.
The fascists who have 1 seat out of 450, got it.
The fascist that was the chair of the Verkhovna Rada, yes, Andriy Parubi.
This one.
Who is now out of power, by the way, for like years.
Jay Grimes
So
says
next
Yeah,
question.
but they still
documentation
control
of
it.
the extent of Nazi integration into the Ukraine National Guard includes extensive documentation by WAPO, Vice, and even CNN. Russian propaganda, I presume.
Sure. I mean, of course, there are far-right elements, as in with any security structures, and at that point, this is why I advocate seeking them at the Russians, right? Because at that point, you'll stop the imperialist onslaught, and you'll end up with less Nazis in the end.
That's
So-
also what the
Win-win.
that's also what the British intelligence wanted to do with Hitler against the Soviets. So congratulations for re-enabling fascism and Nazism historically.
good thing. Good
The
thing
only
this-
people re-enabling it would be Russia that's attacking
Yeah,
into the
yeah.
country then. And Boletsky left when the Azov Battalion was assumed in 20. They have this like official far-right leadership or whatever. You guys can keep going to try to
he's
find,
the
like,
commander. He's the
historically-
commander of the Azov Battalion.
No, he was. He left in 2014
No,
when they were
still,
assumed into the military.
you can look even at the Kiev Independent. They still quote him as the commander of the Azov
The
Battalion.
current commander is like Proko Pensky or some shit. It's not. Boletsky left when they were assumed into the military.
He literally was in Mariupol.
I don't know where he is. I don't really care. But I know
He
that
was-
the current leader of the Azov.
The Kiev Independent literally quoted him as such when he made the claim that there was a chemical
The
attack
current
on.
commander is Denis Prokopenko as of 2017 to now, and Boletsky left in 2014. I can quote your own Wikipedia you since you like that as a source so much. Here you go. You can read the side for everybody. There you go. What's the
Still
next
got
question?
those two little
This
scars
one coming in from
right there,
Chris
two
Warlock
little
says
circle
for Adam,
scars.
Did Russia
Same
send
couple.
50,000 troops to take
She's got a thing on her
the
eye, on
city
her
of
right eye,
3.5
and he's got,
million,
on his
pulled
right side, he's got those
5
two scars.
AFU battalions off the Donbass line and allowed for the current situation? 95% of Lugansk under Russian control.
Can you repeat that question, the first part especially?
Yep, they said, did Russia send 50,000 troops to Kiev, a city of 3.5 million?
Oh yeah, okay, got you. Yeah, so yes, because the Russian plan originally was that the Kiev regime, the Nazi junta or whatever, will collapse, and the Ukrainian troops will lay down their arms in the face of the overwhelming Russian superiority, which of course didn't happen.
You have
Actually,
evidence?
in the first, Sure. Listen to Vladimir Putin, dude. And also in the first few days of the war, we saw Russians essentially charging into Kiev, just like small, disparate operations. Also in Ukraine, but they get executed. There were multiple attempts at Zelensky's life. So basically, these idiots imagine that the Ukrainian army will just disperse and they're just gonna roll into the city. And
Do you have evidence that's their plan?
Yes, and have a victory parade on the 9th of May. Actually, funny thing is, in many cars, in many vehicles of the Russians, they found these like parade uniforms. Actually thought that they're gonna have the 9th of May parade on like Krashchatyk.
That sounds like something completely.
Whoa, hey, dude, this question was for me. Feel free to answer your question if you get one. So anyway, this was the plan. Misguided. They had to revise it like 8 times, and now it looks like the Russian army has finally culminated in Severodonetsk, a town of 100,000. Which is just embarrassing. So we'll be seeing more and more.
Sounds like they were targeting.
Whoa! Here, I'm not done. And after that, we'll be seeing more and more Ukrainian harassment, counterattacks, and Russian attrition. And we'll see. Hopefully, the Russian Empire will collapse.
I'm just curious for Jackson and Haas, give you guys a chance to talk. Can you explain what was the Russian strategy behind sending like so many like unaccompanied APCs get like solo destroyed by people with rocket launchers? What was the strategy there?
Plus the 30-mile truck convoy. Don't forget it.
Yeah, can you explain?
I'll first say, Destiny, you no longer being commander, but I incorrectly quoted the Kiev Independent, who on April 11th said that he was Azov's leader, and they've been known to lie throughout this war, so I incorrectly quoted them. I quoted them correctly, but they incorrectly reported, I guess is a better way of saying it. As to why Russian military tanks were blown the hell up, I mean, they lost a lot of military personnel. There was multiple times in which Ukrainians, when Russians were trying to enter certain cities, they just blew entire platoons and units up. They slaughtered them. But overall, the military strategy of Russia has been a flow of water approach, where they go where they can go, and if they get stopped by Ukrainians, they don't continue pushing through into the city. Hey, I let you talk, Adam.
Special operation.
I literally let you talk.
Very special operation.
And yeah, so there was multiple attempts where they tried to go into certain cities and they were blown up and they were slaughtered by the Ukrainians. That's a true thing. They have lost a lot of troops. But yeah, but the overall military strategy has proved to be effective because, again, they've controlled, then Ukraine has been able to protect. I mean, they've lost virtually every single battle. There's been a few small battles in which Ukraine has won, but the overall large battles, such as in Popasnia, they've lost all these major battles thus far. They've lost Severodonetsk almost entirely. According to Ukrainian officials, they've lost 80% of it. They've already started taking small villages outside Lysychansk, where they're about to encircle 16,000 Ukrainian troops. So, yeah, they may have lost troops, but their strategy has been very effective, and
so
Ukraine is getting...
Russia has said that they have lost, what is this, almost 24,000 people?
Show me the evidence. What is your data for that?
Wait, hold on, let me check. I'm trying to look at the casualties.
Also,
usually
oftentimes it's reported that
open source intelligence.
Oftentimes it's reported that Russia's retreating because of this huge counterattack. Russian soldiers have even pulled back in tanks. They've even pulled back at the slightest whiff of the most minimal resistance.
Damn,
that doesn't even kill anyone.
Second strongest army.
And the reason they do that, these people, and they're going to lose to them because they're trying to minimize casualties. So they'll pull back, usually encircle the place for a more long-term strategy. I mean, they could have stormed Azovstal, and they didn't.
So how come they didn't?
Because it wasn't their strategy to take Kiev at that time.
I thought encirclement was anyway. So the real reason for anyone interested is attrition. So if you pull in like guns blazing, no combined arms, just send in the heavy columns, Ukrainians will blow the fuck up with like mobile.
Oh, it's because they want to minimize casualties.
Yeah,
because even when Ukrainians have not they still pulled back.
So anyway, so this is called attrition. So basically, you don't defeat an army head on. You essentially
Yes, it is a war of attrition.
Yeah, then how to keep Russians?
No, it's not.
Because unsustainable.
It is without a doubt a war of attrition. Kiev was an example of a feint strategy, but yes, this is a war of attrition, and it's proving quite successful for the Russians.
I mean, the Russians. They could have They could have taken many places, many villages, and they decided not to because they want to minimize casualties on both sides.
I don't understand how you. Or I understand it. I just.
okay.
Well, wait, I'm curious. I'm just curious. What would success look like to you in a month?
Oh, they hold
Because, like, if I
20%
asked
of
you guys a few
Ukraine.
months ago, you would have said that
That
obviously
looks like
they're gonna be
success.
controlling Kiev.
I don't have the Russian military playbook
Russia
before
has
me.
not been transparent about. I've made the mistake of trying to like infer and speculate about what their like plan is. It's not disclosed to the public. It's only disclosed to the actual people in charge of the operation.
But
And
Hinkle,
I'm not going to try and speculate on what what their timetable is or any of that kind of stuff.
I will say I'll make a
Jackson,
guess.
just-
Well, no, he asked me a question. I want to respond.
Oh, sure,
I'll
go
make a
ahead.
guess.
Yeah, sure.
I wouldn't be surprised if Russia doesn't end the operation until they get Mykolaiv, Zaporizhia, and Odessa.
Okay, so Jackson,
I gotta
don't-
wrap
don't
this
feel-
up pretty
don't
quick.
Feel, just, one sentence. Jackson, don't feel too bad if you don't have. If
Yeah,
you don't
try to
know
get
the
through the
Russian
sentence without so for it.
Oh, sure. That Jackson charisma, huh? No, just don't feel too bad if you don't have the Russian.
Okay,
military.
good
Because
job. You're not
Russia
stuttering
doesn't-
yet.
All right, I got to give him a chance to actually.
Bro, how many languages do you speak, Jackson? Wait, what the fuck? It's this guy's ESL debating you, and you're making fun of him for stuttering? Are you actually retarded?
well.
Anytime somebody makes fun of a foreign language, you just speak in your fucking native language.
Did you just call me retarded? That definitely
Ironically,
just
yes.
triggered
Like,
me.
how can you make
That
fun of an
just
ESL
really
guy for
triggered
stuttering
me,
in English?
Destiny.
But
My
you-
liberal
I have to-
sensitivities are so offended.
Hold on, to be fair,
My liberal
Well, I think
sensitivities are
it's
so
only fair
offended,
that
Destiny.
you asked a
I need a
question,
safe
Adam,
space,
and I want to-
Destiny.
It's only fair that he knows
I love
English because
Jackson.
He's trying to use our country.
I love you,
to fight
Jackson.
the
Bass.
It has nothing. I'm just saying that, like,
I am
of all
so
the things you can
triggered.
make fun of somebody for, you can't make fun of a multilingual person for being like not quite as quick with your own language. That's like the
He's
dumbest thing
trying
in the world.
to
Make
use
fun
our
of somebody
sons
for.
and daughters.
I want to give.
He's trying
All
to-
right,
he's trying
I
to
want to
use
give
our military.
Okay, our sons and daughters. Okay,
Jackson,
dude.
you asked
He
Adam a
should-
question.
he
I
should
want to
use
give
our
him a
language.
chance to respond without being interrupted.
Oh, that's fine. I think we can go on.
That is it. I promise our guests we're going to get them out of here at a decent time. So,
Oh
folks,
wait, can I ask one more question? Then they can respond. Okay, I'm giving them the last
for
word.
short and pithy questions.
Very short. Do you think in 3 months will Russia control more or less territory than it does right now in Ukraine?
Without a doubt, more.
Okay.
Without a doubt. In fact, I think they'll control more by the end of this week.
Yeah, finally, one last thing. I just wanted to end it on this. We couldn't get Adam in on this one, so original plan is on. That was the tweet Modern Day Debate put out in public. That's it.
The what? Wait, which tweet?
Mom, this female's pregnant. Yeah. That's why she's laying down, taking it easy. She's eating a whole bunch.
Since you guys,
Look, now she's eating your plant.
So
this is what I said.
Look, she's eating the plant on the swing.
To
She's
clarify,
a
tomorrow's
bad
night,
girl.
my girlfriend, Infrahaz and Jackson Hinkle is still on. I asked Dylan Burns if Adam something could take Dylan's place, and Dylan was open to it because he's burning the wick at both ends. We couldn't get Adam in on this one. In other words, it wasn't that he had already committed and then backed out. He just said it wasn't going to fit with his schedule. So original plan is on. Which
So it wasn't us.
Well, I don't think
Thank you.
anybody backed out. If I
Wait,
remember.
didn't we have an original debate set up with the 4 of us, and then those
Don't you think it's incredible though that Azov something was going out to his YouTube audience and claiming that we backed out when it was in fact a scheduling error on his own part that
Hold on,
prevented him
James,
from
can
participating
you
in the
tell me,
debate?
James,
It's really
was
incredible.
there an original debate between all 4
He's a
of us that
Nazi
they backed out
supporter and he's a massive liar.
Wait, let James, James.
There was.
It wasn't,
There was.
yeah.
I remember it was something that I think I said. I came to Jackson.
Second of March.
Came to Jackson and Haas, you guys, and I said, could it be Destiny and Adam? And then I had a hate boner for Dylan. Infrared said, no, Dylan has to be in it. He said, Dylan can't be a co-host.
Yes.
I reject that debate.
Oh, okay.
No. All I said yes to that and something, no to the Dylan as a. Why would Dylan co-host? He's not
Exactly.
debating.
Okay, that's
How would
fine.
you
But
get-
you guys, so you had a reason, but you did back out of the first debate. That's all.
No,
We
but
didn't.
then
But
Adam was
modern day debate
Adam
said
was
we
ready to
couldn't get
debate. Adam was ready to debate, and then he said he couldn't because of a scheduling conflict.
Yeah.
Well, no, that sounds like a second debate that was never agreed on.
That what?
No, it
How's that a
doesn't.
second debate if we just said we didn't want Dylan Burns to be the co-host?
Yeah. Why
That's
would
the
we
same
do
exact
this?
debate. We just said we didn't want Dylan to be a
host is supposed
co-host.
neutral. Why would we want Dylan Burns?
I really don't think anybody backed out. I want to say, folks, all of our guests are linked in the description. If you'd like to learn more, we highly encourage you. We really do appreciate our guests, and I will put up that charity receipt as 100% of the super chats from tonight's debate will be going to the Domestic Action Center. And so, Thank you very much for your support.
It was
That
a great
receipt for
debate.
that donation will be up on the social tab on our YouTube channel within the next 48 hours. Thank you to our guests, though. It's been a true pleasure to have you guys.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a good debate.
It's been great.
With that, I'll
Thank
be
you.
back in just a moment with a post-credit scene letting you know about upcoming debates. With that, stick around. Thanks so much, folks.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
That was great.
Sniveling little fucking Nazi supporter. Sniveling Nazi supporter. Well, that was the most one-sided debate I've ever been
He's
a part
got
of.
4,200
usually
people
prepare
watching.
quite a bit for my debates. Like, I usually do a lot of preparation. I did no preparation. In fact, last night,
A party.
I had a very night, and I woke up and very late.
I went out and partied.
And I did like no preparation for that, and we still eviscerated the sniveling Azov supporting Bandera supporter, and the political video gamer Destiny. That was the most one-sided debate I've ever been a part of. I almost felt bad for them a little bit, how one-sided that debate was. What does that bring my tally to of victories in debates? I don't lose debates. Like,
Two,
I don't
for
see
sure.
how any objective viewer could look at that and be like, Jackson has lost. It's like, we put up so much evidence, and they would just be like, well, we either think that the evidence doesn't matter or that that's just Russian propaganda. Or how about the part where the constitutional law in Ukraine doesn't matter? I guarantee you, if there was some violation of like Ukrainian law as a result of like Viktor Yanukovych, they would defend Ukrainian law to the end of the earth. But when it's a U.S.-backed coup regime of fascists and Nazis who are the ones violating the constitutional law, they're like, it doesn't matter. It's a popular revolution. It's like the Bolsheviks, right? It's just like the Bolsheviks. They got bodied. And the chat was, holy shit. That was bad for them. I kind of feel a little bit bad for them. That was bad. I do not think that Azov something will be uploading that to his own YouTube. That would probably be very embarrassing for him. That was probably the most one-sided debate I've ever been a part of. That was more one-sided than my Sam Cedar debate. That was more one-sided than my Vosh debate. That was more one-sided than my last debate with Destiny. That was without a doubt the most one-sided debate. And I thought we did a really good job of presenting the information. And I also felt like they were on the defense the entire time. Like, not because we were like over-talking. I just think that like we had the arguments that were very strong. Therefore, they were constantly having to like make up these conspiracy theories as they were like stuttering and sniveling throughout their defending of Azov, Nazis and Stefan Bandera. Let me just show you what Azov something said, because if you don't believe me that he is a Azov defender and a Bandera defender, I can show you this right here. So here's a video of him defending the Azov battalion. This is from one of his own viewers. Adam, something is seriously one of the dumbest people on YouTube literally defending support for the Azov battalion.
So the Ukrainian military was in shambles as a war was going on in the east, fueled by Russia. In response, the Ukrainian government turned to the ultra-nationalists to help beat back the enemy. Then the Minister of Interior made the Azov battalion officially part of the National Guard. And my question here is, what else was the Ukrainian government was supposed to do? The country was falling apart, the separatists were spreading westward, their military was in shambles, and among the few forces you did have, you didn't know who's going to betray you for Russia. Then comes a group of highly motivated ultra-nationalists with weapons training, whose entire worldview is predicated on fighting Russian invaders, and whose allegiance is unquestionably with Ukraine. And they tell you, give us weapons and support and we'll get shit done. What decision maker would say no to that? Even wouldn't sending them to war mean many of them would die? That would be a win-win, right?
Pause. The far righters. So the Azov is no longer Nazi. They're just far righters. Okay, got it.
You help halt the Russian offensives, and you end up with less ultra-nationalists in the end. And the reason why they got integrated into the National Guard is because they did get the job done. They were effective, had high morale, and could be trusted to not switch sides. So the Ukrainian military was in shambles as a war was going on in the east, fueled by Russia. In response, the Ukrainian government turned to the ultra-nationalists to help beat back the enemy. Then the Minister of Interior battalion officially part of the National Guard. And my question here is, what else was the Ukrainian government was supposed to do?
What else was the Ukrainian government supposed to do? Yes, I'm sure that's exactly what so many, SS members said
Get into
during
bed
the
with
Nuremberg
Nazis.
tribunals. What else was I supposed to do? I don't know. What else was I supposed to do? They were promising us liberation and a free Ukraine. Slava Zucchini.
All right, you
Stefan
guys, I
Bandera
hope you
said
had fun.
if we just issued
Hope you
the
enjoyed this
summonses,
2-hour
if we just
show.
slaughtered a few hundred
Thanks.
thousand.
Shouts out to Jackson Hinkle and everybody that participated in that debate. It was fantastic, and those motherfuckers got owned. by Jackson. I hope you guys had fun. Nick says keep it open. Okay, you guys are fantastic. I love you guys. I'll see you tomorrow. All right. Take care, guys.